By the time Rock Band Games had released Vice City Chronicles on the Game Station 2 in 2007, the 7th generation of consoles was already in full swing. It was well past time to put away that Dreamcast and upgrade to either the over-engineered, overcomplicated, overpriced PS3, which included a whole bunch of crap nobody asked for, or the simple, humble, affordable Xbox 360, which had a 50-50 chance of it doesn't work anymore within 6 months. Also, the Wii. The GTA trilogy, in a lot of ways, defined the PS2. San Andreas was the best-selling game on that console, and the others didn't do too bad either. They were also released on Xbox a little later and did pretty well there too. After that, they were re-released and/or repackaged on pretty much every conceivable platform, and mostly just kept getting whittled down more and more with each release. I had never played any of these iconic games before, and after trying to figure out the best version to play for the first time,
the definitive edition.
the PC version, kind of hard to get a hold of.
Just get an emulator for your really
I just decided to cut through all the bullshit, stop trying to understand whatever people love or hate about whichever version of the game, or trying to get an emulator working on my old-ass MacBook. I just went ahead and bought a PS2 and the original versions of the games on discs and played them in their original form, and guess what? They're still incredible. I had a pretty hard time with GTA 3 and didn't end up loving it, but I did like it, and I did enjoy playing it, and I did enjoy familiarizing myself more with the roots of the franchise. And then Vice City and San Andreas ended up being two of the best games I've ever played, and there's a lot I would have missed out on if I had just gone for the newest, easiest versions. Most notably the iconic soundtracks, but there are countless other things, both big and small, that all add up to create a superbly inferior product. I also ended up playing the PS2 versions of the GTA Stories games, totaling 5 videos about games I've never played before that you should watch real quick and then come right back here. But today we're finally here to talk about a game that I have played before, the game I was given with my Xbox 360 when I got it for Christmas as a child, and that game was Halo 3 ODST. I was a huge fan of Halo 1 and 2 on the original Xbox, and I didn't get a 360 until a couple of years after Halo 3 came out. I wanted a Wii instead, but I had played it a few times at friends' houses, and I was overjoyed to finally be able to sit down and bust through the campaign myself. However, none of what I was playing was familiar to me at all. This was just not the Halo 3 campaign whatsoever. My dad kept insisting that this was Halo 3, it's just the ODST version, which means it has extra content, and I was probably playing through the extra levels that they put in, and that's why I didn't recognize them. But nothing about it was right. You can't dual wield, none of the characters I knew from Halo were in it, the vibe was super different, you don't even play as Master Chief. So eventually I did get my hands on a copy of the actual Halo 3 and was very happy. But in my dad's defense, this is a confusing ass title. I mean, just drop the 3 and call it Halo ODST. It's not like it really has any more to do with Halo 3 than any of the other Halo games. So many franchises struggle to name things appropriately. Can we just give the main series games numbers and give the spin-off games subtitles? Aside from the ODST fumble, Halo's actually done a pretty good job of this. The spin-offs and prequels have their own names, then we have Halo 1, which had its own subtitle, but that doesn't matter if it's the first game. Halo 2, Halo 3, Halo 4, Halo 5, but then Halo 5 also needed a subtitle? They always say this is for marketing purposes? Yeah, I don't want to buy a game called Halo 5. Never heard of Halo. Wait a second. Guardians? I didn't know this game had Guardians in it. Alright, I'm in. Then Halo 6 didn't get a number. It's called Halo Infinite because it's gonna go on forever. Oh. See, this wouldn't have happened if you'd called it Halo 6, and made it good. Now, all of this, of course, brings us back to the Grand Theft Auto franchise. If you're watching this video, you almost certainly know that Vice City and San Andreas are not numbered entries, but are still very much considered mainline entries. You and I know that, but my dad doesn't know that. When he's sitting there looking at Grand Theft Auto Advance, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, Grand Theft Auto London, and Grand Theft Auto Vice City Stories, how is he supposed to know which of those games is a main series entry and which ones are spin-offs based on those titles? Even if you tell him exactly what game you want, it could still be confusing. Dad, I'd like a copy of Grand Theft Auto Vice City Stories for my PS2. So he writes down on his list Grand Theft Auto Vice City Stories PlayStation 2. Then he gets to the store, finds the PS2 games, and goes, okay, Grand Theft Auto Vice City Stories, written down on my list. All right. Grand Theft Auto 3, no. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, no. Vice Cities, that's the one I wrote down. Perfect. See, he has no idea these are two different games. The fact that the word stories isn't written anywhere on the cover probably doesn't even register to him. So Rockstar just said, yeah, these subtitles are getting out of hand. We need to just give the next one a nice clean number so people know, yes, this is the next big full-on, brand new Grand Theft Auto game. Now, a lot of people say this isn't really GTA 4, because if GTA 3 is GTA 3, well then that would make Vice City GTA 4. Then San Andreas would be GTA 5, which would mean GTA 4 would technically be GTA 6. We got GTA 6 before GTA 6. The way I like to think of it, my headcanon if you will, is that because GTA 3 was the first game in this new type of game series, it's kind of like a reboot. So like GTA 3 is like the new first one, right? And the first, then Vice City is the second one, San Andreas is the third one, then GTA 4 is GTA 4, GTA 5 is 5, 6 is 6, and we've restored balance to the universe. The hype for this game was bigger than ever before. After what they accomplished with San Andreas and the new ideas the spin-offs had brought to the table, audiences were frothing to see what they could pull off with the new generation of hardware. This was a time when people would line up in the snow all evening awaiting the release of an anticipated title, when gamers were still excited to see where the medium would go. The final years when the best way to make money on a game was to make a good game. It was still considered unacceptable to release a game unfinished and work on it more later. We couldn't wait to see what the next high-quality, boundary-pushing, top-of-the-line product had to offer. Now everything sucks. So while I myself didn't care about this game at that time, I do still remember what video game hype was like back then. Maybe it's nostalgia goggles, but it felt like every game was exciting and almost all of them delivered. These days we already know every game is gonna suck months before it even comes out. Now during the previous generation, GTA was a total afterthought on Xbox. These were later releases that didn't come out until like a year or two after they were released on PS2. In a lot of ways they were better than the PS2 versions, as was usually the case, and I already had an Xbox and I was just gonna play the games on that, but after a little consideration, I really wanted to have the original versions, so I bought the PS2 instead. However, during the 7th generation, Rockstar started releasing the GTA games on PlayStation and Xbox concurrently, so now instead of one original version of the game, there are now two, and since I already have an Xbox 360 and I do not have a PS3, I decided to hop back over the fence for GTA 4 because you know I gotta play on that original hardware. And just like the PS2 games, just like all games, if it holds up on its original hardware, it's a lot more impressive than a version of the game that's been updated with a bunch of quality of life improvements. Not that I don't appreciate a thoughtfully done remaster, but I really think nothing compares to playing a game on the hardware it was developed for. And my personal opinion is that if a game's been changed too much with a bunch of updates, then the original version's the only fair way to judge it. Thankfully, I have an older Xbox 360 that does not have Wi-Fi capabilities and hasn't been connected to the internet since 2014, so all I had to do was buy the original disc and pop it into the old girl and boom, I'm playing an untouched version. But wait, this game also has some super iconic and beloved DLC, and DLC is by definition downloaded from the internet, and you can only download the latest version, so there'd be no way to play the DLC in its original form. Just kidding, this is from an era when game companies were cool, and so this DLC also had a physical version released on disc. Big tech isn't gonna beat me this time, baby! So let me tell you how soothing it was to dig up my childhood 360, plug it in, and just be reminded that this thing was entirely incapable of connecting to the internet without physically attaching something to it. Now don't be surprised if within the next few years Microsoft is legally allowed to send a team to break into your home and smash any products you refuse to update with a hammer and then send you a bill for their labor, but thankfully we aren't there yet, and I was able to play the unaltered version of the game the way God intended. During the PS2 era, Rockstar had pushed the envelope so far with the main trilogy that it was almost difficult to comprehend what a next-gen GTA could have been. There was a lot of speculation that it would just be a further increase in scale, sort of a linear progression from San Andreas, like it's gonna be the whole country, combining all the maps from the last 3 games, and adding brand new cities, maybe Seattle, Chicago, Washington, D.C. I can see why people might think that is the next logical step, but maybe a little too obvious and wouldn't have felt like as much of a shift. Instead, they went back to the drawing board and decided on a quality over quantity approach. Oh, and don't forget about this famous leak that obviously ended up being completely fake and in hindsight is pretty uninspired. It barely even looks any better than the previous games. It seemed like it's trying to look like it's set in Vice City, the HUD is pretty similar aesthetically, and you got the palm trees and the old 50s cars like I think they use in Miami. Then there's a stupid 3D map down here, which I guess is supposed to make it look more next-gen, but would obviously be really impractical to actually use during gameplay. And then we have, of course, everyone's favorite GTA protagonist, Claire Redfield, wielding a mace. I don't think anybody was expecting a more serious, scaled-back, and physically smaller game than San Andreas. See, even though it's called 4, this game is a full reboot of the entire franchise, a brand new universe where none of the events of the previous games ever happened. GTA 3 also started a new universe separate from 1 and 2, but I don't know if that was really an intention right away with that game. It kind of feels more like it was only as the series went on that they did need to clarify which games are connected and which ones aren't. But GTA 4 is a fresh timeline right off the bat. Personally, I find it a little unfortunate in some ways that none of the lore carries over since that was such a well-built universe, but I also think the clean break was the right move and helps make this feel truly new. And Liberty City in this game is so drastically different than it was portrayed before before that it would probably be too much of a stretch to believe these are the same place. In GTA 1, Liberty City was just a map that vaguely resembled a New York-type city. Then in GTA 3, it was a completely different map, but still didn't include anything that necessarily made it look more like New York than some other city, like Chicago or Detroit or something. It wasn't until Vice City where the locations finally got specific. So even though this is their third attempt at doing a New York setting, this is the first time Rockstar attempted an actual direct adaptation of NYC. Now the results are damned impressive, but I think I'm getting ahead of myself because I like to start these videos off by going over the game's story. Helps contextualize everything that comes after and eases you all in to make my videos feel like a hot tub. And this hot tub is much deeper than you may be expecting, so while it might not be safe to do in a standard hot tub because they're so shallow, let us dive into this hot tub. In Grand Theft Auto 4, you step into the sweatpants of Niko Bellic, a Serbian immigrant who's just walking off the boat when we're introduced to him in the opening scene. We learn through dialogue that some things happened which led to a circumstance causing a situation leading to Niko being on this boat, docking in the USA to stay with his cousin Roman, who's been living in Liberty City for some time. Him and Niko grew up together in the old country. Roman shows up in his famous taxi cab, and Niko can't wait to see all the mansions and hot tubs and taxi cabs Roman always writes him about, but it's soon revealed that he resides in this tiny apartment that's a little disappointing to Niko after hearing about all the hot tubs, but considering Roman came to America with like $8 and a box of nails, he's doing alright. Plus, this shithole studio in Brooklyn probably costs like $3,200 a month anyway, so Niko's like, you know what, cousin, I love your hustle, and the two of them get to catching up. We learn a little bit about Niko's backstory, which I'll help explain.
You remember, during the war, we did some bad things.
During the war, he did some
bad things.
Bad things happened to him. Them.
War is where the young and stupid are tricked by the old and bitter into killing each other.
The young and bitter killing.
I was very young.
He was very young.
And very angry.
He was very young and very angry.
Maybe that is no excuse.
I mean, it was no excuse.
Roman?
Roman!
My
God, Roman was asleep! Dude, that is classic. That is classic. The next morning, Niko goes to see Roman at his taxi cab business and also meets his girlfriend Mallory, and she's all like, "Oh, I'm from New York, I'm walking here." But also, she's pretty cool. Unfortunately, they don't have too much time to vibe out before this guy Vlad shows up to remind Roman that he owes him money. And he hits on Mallory right in front of the cousins, which is supposedly cool because I guess they have an open relationship, but still Niko, a traditionalist, gets caught mad-dogging Vlad from across the room, which Vlad finds disrespectful and leaves. Niko takes Roman to go make some money at a backroom table, but then a couple of guys show up to break his legs, so Niko has to get them both out of there, and you learn a tutorial about how to run away from some guys. They make it away from the guys, but later the guys show up, and Niko shows them what's what, and then the guys leave, so it's all good for now. So then Mallory calls and asks Niko to pick up her and her friend Michelle. Mallory really wants Niko to take Michelle out on a date because she seems so above board, so Niko ends up getting her number before dropping her off at home. They schedule a date, but while Niko's on his way, he gets a call from Roman, who needs help because he's about to get punched hard. You do have the option of ignoring him and going straight to Michelle, but don't do that. Niko saves Roman by beating those guys up, and him and Michelle still end up going on a date later, and she's a little odd. Her apartment's full of brand new stuff and says it's just because she likes things clean and never wants to talk about herself, but Niko seems to be able to get along with people pretty easily, so things are smooth, and maybe he just thinks it's normal for Americans to replace all their furniture with brand new stuff like twice a year. What does he know? He's just new in town and is probably happy to have someone to do things with. Niko stops by the cab depot where he sees Vlad hitting on Mallory once again. Despite the open relationship, Niko simply doesn't like Vlad, and the feeling seems to be mutual. But since Roman still owes Vlad, Niko doesn't see much of a choice but to take up Vlad's offer to do some work for him, even though he's quite unhappy about it. Roman also hooks Niko up with his acquaintance Little Jacob, a real solid fellow.
Oh, Niko.
Hey.
Glad to see the man, you know. I'm to my man, Roman.
Roman? He's okay. He's still waiting for his big break, eh?
Big break? Sure. I promise I'll comfort to a fool in a Niko.
Jacob needs Niko to cover him during a drug deal, which of course goes wrong, but Niko proves himself to Jacob right away by getting them out swiftly, and after this they continue working together and strengthening their masculine bond. Niko's work for Vlad culminates in Niko having to do a hit for him. You get to choose whether or not to kill this guy, but either way, Niko gets fed up taking orders from Vlad, and when Roman finds out Vlad has actually finally been sleeping with Mallory, Niko decides Vlad has to go. And even though they have an open relationship, Roman takes it personally because Vlad's such an asshole, so they're both pretty fired up to give Vlad what for, and Niko's such an old-timer that he thinks he should just whack him. Roman tries to talk him down since Vlad's a pretty well-connected guy, but Niko's more or less made up his mind, and peace was never an option. They chase Vlad to an isolated area, and Niko puts one right between between his eyes. The way he covers his face before pulling the trigger is such a cold move. This is the kind of thing only a fucking killer does, being more bothered by the unpleasantness of blood on your face than the unpleasantness of taking a man's life. Roman starts freaking out, and Nico seems to be a little regretful, so in his vulnerable state he opens up about the real reason he came to America. Years ago, when Nico was in the army, him and his squad of 15 were betrayed by one of their own, and only 3 escaped, including Nico, leaving only 2 possible suspects for who the traitor was. Nico's been searching for them for 10 years and finally knows one of them is here in Liberty City. Since the incident, he's been driven purely by revenge and has traveled halfway around the world to get it. He's gonna find this guy by any means necessary, but does feel a little bad about the position he's put Roman in here, because he does seem to care about and love his cousin a lot. The other day I was texting someone about Neelix from Star Trek, but I accidentally spelled it with only 1 E, then it auto-corrected to Bellic, but with 1 L, so that should really tell you something. Before Nico can make much more headway on his quest, him and Roman are taken in by Vlad's boss, Mikhail Faustin. Things look pretty bad for our lovely cousins being tied up in a basement, but luckily Faustin doesn't actually give a fuck about Vlad or his guy here who he just shoots in the head to make a dramatic gesture, much to the shock of his other guy here, Dmitri. Roman isn't too happy about it either, but luckily Faustin sees a lot of value in Nico's skills and decides to keep them alive after proving how crazy he is. Pretty good, all things considered. They kind of failed upwards with this one. Good job, boys. Dmitri goes along with Nico on his first job for Faustin, where he tells Nico Faustin is starting to lose it and that killing his own guy like that was actually totally bad and he's turning into a freaking menace and drastic steps might need to be taken.
Where would we be now if I was calm like you?
Let me guess. In a prison camp in Siberia, or selling hash to tourists in Red Square, or still in the Navy.
In the Navy.
But for now, Nico enjoys a steady stream of work. He meets Roman's friend Brucey, the original alpha male. I feel like I should find this character super annoying, but his in-your-face energy is kind of infectious, and his crazy insecure overcompensating is usually pretty funny.
I got you, man. I'm big, but I'm also fast. Wake up, boy!
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you show me that again?
Nico also meets Jacob's friend Badman, and if you thought little Jacob was a Rasta man, then you not see nothing yet, me brethren.
Hey, Mayu, some boy them dip on the corner and thing on. Boy them dip on the corner, me say the boy them other things and my corner and thing, I'm gonna write that to the boy them go on and say, oh, money and thing, you know. I know say that go, you know, I want to deal with the case proper, you know, see.
There's this one guy that Faustin has Nico kill and blow up his garage, but this ends up being a sizable fuck-up because it turns out the guy's family comes seeking damages in the form of revenge. They want Faustin dead for this, but Dimitri's able to work out a deal to spare Nico's life as long as Nico is the one to kill Faustin, since he's just completely out of control and Dimitri is frankly sick of him. Nico takes out Faustin with no hesitation, but when he goes to collect the payment from Dimitri, Jacob calls him and tells him that there might be something off with the handover, and he's gonna meet Nico there to cover his back. Not really sure what Nico did to earn this man's unwavering loyalty in such a short amount of time, but Jacob is just the ultimate homie for this because it turns out, sure enough, Dimitri does double-cross Nico by turning him over to this guy, Ray Bulgarin, who Nico used to work for, but he thinks Nico stole from him one time because Nico lost a big shipment of his. But Nico calmly explains that he was robbed and barely escaped with his life. Unfortunately, Bulgarin isn't convinced and tries to take Nico out. The boys make it out of there just fine, but not in time to catch up with Bulgarin or Dimitri. Nico then sees Roman to discuss the current situation, and the two of them decide they need to lay low, and they're gonna hide out in a place across town that Mallory's able to hook them up with. They stop by Roman's apartment to grab their things, only to find it on fire! It's too late to save anything, so they rush down to Roman's cab depot, only to find it on fire! And since this is all because of Nico, Roman goes off a bit about how hard it was building his way up from nothing in this country. I like that Nico genuinely feels bad for screwing up Roman's life. As ice cold as he is, he does really care about his cousin. Mallory helps him settle into their new place, and Nico meets her at the community center the next day, where this guy, Manny Escuela, no relation, is filming a reality show about him cleaning up the streets. Manny wants Nico's help, and even though Nico is a little camera shy, he agrees to help in exchange for money. Manny mostly has him killing petty criminals to help clean up the streets, but he's clearly just in it for the glory and mostly takes credit for Nico's work, not that Nico wants the attention. Now, I'm gonna be honest, as compelling as this plot can be overall, in many ways, after Dimitri's betrayal, there's a whole lot of this guy introduces Nico to this guy, and then there's a whole lot of work for and or with them. I think it isn't great for the pace of the story, but I guess it is great for having more missions for you to play in a video game, so... Mallory introduces Nico to Elizabeta Torres, a mid-level drug dealer who offers Nico work for money, and then Elizabeta introduces Nico to this guy, Packy McCreary, and sends them off on a job together. They seem to have a mutual respect for each other right away and start a little broship for themselves. Soon Elizabeta also introduces Nico to Playboy X, a big-time drug man, and Johnny Klebitz, a biker. The three of them go on a deal together, and the buyer's extremely on edge because he's actually a cop, and they have to shoot their way out of there. Nico and Playboy escape together but lose track of Johnny. The following evening, Nico gets a text from a mysterious stranger stranger who turns out to be police detective Francis McCreary, who Nico briefly met on Manny's show earlier. Francis McCreary also happens to be Packy McCreary's brother, but we soon learn that the family is massive in Liberty City, and McCreary boys are basically a dime a dozen, leading all kinds of lives. But mostly they're criminals. Francis mentions some of Nico's crimes and basically blackmails Nico into helping him get out of his own blackmail situation since he's super corrupt. Nico deals with the blackmailer and ends up doing a bunch of work for Francis, mostly taking out people who are trying to expose him. Later, when Nico and Jacob are on a job stealing a shipment for Elizabeta, they go to drop off the stuff, but are greeted by none other than Michelle, the woman who Nico's been dating, and who hopefully you've at least gotten to second base with. I sure haven't. She reveals that she's working for the government in some capacity and has been using Nico to help gather information, and they're about to take Elizabeta down, and she makes Nico give her the drugs. That night, Nico goes to see Elizabeta, who's freaking out about being about to go to jail forever when Manny busts in, shoving a camera in her face. He's obviously bitten off more than he can chew this time, catching Elizabeta in a particularly bad mood. And of course she needs Nico to take care of the bodies before he settles himself in for a good night's sleep. Nico keeps hitting that grind, doing whatever jobs come his way. He meets a few more of Packy's other brothers, who he starts working with a bit. Playboy introduces Nico to his old friend Dwayne, who's just getting out of a long prison sentence. Playboy clearly doesn't want Dwayne around anymore, but Nico feels kind of a kinship with Dwayne and sees a lot of himself in him, so he ends up being another guy with whom Nico forms a strong, manly bond. Playboy, on the other hand, continues to prove himself to be a pompous jackass, and soon he comes to Nico asking him to kill Dwayne, and in turn, Dwayne then comes to Nico asking him to kill Playboy, and you, the player, have to decide who lives and who dies. It is a choice to think about, but I always go with killing Playboy. It just seems more like what Nico would actually do, and you get this sweet penthouse as icing on the cake. And as icing on the icing, you get this outfit here so you can dress up as Clyde from the first game. Look at me, I'm Clyde from GTA 1. One day, on a bank robbery with Packy and his other brother Derek and their longtime accomplice Michael, no relation, things start to fall apart when Packy and Derek get into an argument, which leads to this dumbass shooting Michael and then getting his own dumbass self-shot. When the police start pouring in, Nico and the McCreary boys have to shoot their way through half the city, and they somehow end up getting away with the money. And this is really just another Tuesday for Nico, as he keeps doing jobs. He works with Packy's brother Gerald, which also gets him involved with a few mafia guys, for example, Ray Buccino, no relation. Ray eventually has Nico help these other guys go retrieve some diamonds that he has stashed around the city, but then those other guys end up trying to take the diamonds for themselves, so Nico then proves himself to Ray by killing those guys and taking the diamonds back to him. Ray sets up a deal to sell the diamonds and sends Nico to meet up with Johnny, the biker, to do the deal together. The sale starts off fine, the Hasidic Mafia brought the money, everything's verified, they're about to wrap things up and head on home until this guy who was at the bank robbery earlier, which eventually turns out to have been an unrelated coincidence, pops up out of nowhere and starts blasting. He hits a few guys, Johnny makes off with the cash, Nico loses track of the diamonds, and of course has to shoot his way out. Ray's totally pissed, but Nico's planning on getting the diamonds back using means. Eventually, Nico's work with crime man Derek McCreary and his work with his brother, soon-to-be police commissioner Francis McCreary, comes to a head. Both Derek and Francis ask Nico to kill the other one for them, if you can believe it. This is another one where the player gets to choose which of them dies. Another interesting choice, but I always reason that they're both murderous criminals, and the only thing more dangerous than a murderous criminal is a murderous criminal who's also a cop, so I go with killing Francis. Have some bacon, you filthy fucking pig. I mean, Derek was a bit of an a-hole too, even by the standards of people Nico usually associates with. Like, Derek has you kill a guy who only went to prison in the first place because Derek snitched on him, and that's not being a girl's girl at all. Doesn't seem like someone Nico would have a lot of respect for. Plus, if you kill Derek, you do actually get an in-game reward in that you can call Francis and lose your wanted level. Whatever. Nico gets a call from Michelle to meet him. She reveals that her name is Karen, I guess, and she introduces Nico to her government boss man, who we'll refer to as Government Boss Man, or Gov Bozeman for short. Bozeman tells Nico he has some work for him, and Nico has no choice but to do it, otherwise he's gonna fuck Nico's life up government style, but there also might be something in it for Nico if he plays along.
Let's go bowling.
Soon he learns that Gerald McCreary has been incarcerated, and for some reason that's Nico's problem, so he goes to see Gerald in prison. Gerald tells Nico to call Packy. He calls Packy. Packy tells Nico he should kidnap Gracie Ancelotti, the daughter of the Ancelotti crime family, because the Ancelotti crime family actually have the diamonds right now. So their plan is to kidnap the boss's daughter and ransom her for the diamonds, which takes a little planning, but Nico ends up posing as a guy who wants to buy her car and then kidnaps her during the test drive. It is at this point that Roman gets kidnapped by Dimitri. Luckily, Nico saves him pretty quick, but once again, it's time to find a new spot to live, which Roman mostly handles this time. This is where Nico enters his mafia era. To summarize this whole part, it's all like, hey, Ray Pacino sends you to see Phil Bell, then you gotta protect Jimmy Pecorino, and you figure out how to do that. Luckily, it's time for Nico to hand Gracie over to the Ancelottis in exchange for getting the diamonds back and not having to deal with these Italians anymore. He takes Packy with him, but right as they're about to get their hands on the sweet, sweet diamonds, Ray Bulgarin, the guy Dimitri was trying to give Nico to earlier, shows up, and after a big shootout, the last guy throws the diamonds over the ledge, which land on a moving truck that they have no hope of catching up to on time, definitively losing the diamonds forever. All that work for nothing. They go back to Packy's mom's house and sulk. But Nico also starts dating Packy's sister Kate, kind of. It seems like maybe they're just hanging out as friends, but kind of maybe a little more into each other than that, but Kate doesn't want to date someone in her brother's line of work, and they don't interact very much during the story. The relationship only develops if the player goes out of their way to hang out with her. A few days later, Ray Boccino calls Nico and gives him the location of Florian Kravich, one of the other two guys from Nico's squad who survived the ambush. One of only two guys who has to be the betrayer. Nico calls up Roman and they get to Florian's apartment only to find out that he's probably not the one they're after. Florian has apparently adopted a whole new lifestyle and changed his name to Bernie Crane. He insists he wasn't the traitor, so Nico looks deep within himself and comes to the conclusion that he does trust Bernie, meaning that the traitor has to be the third guy. In the meantime, Nico helps Bernie with a thing or two around town. He does some work for dying mafio Johnny Gravarelli, which leads to the wrapping up of the mafia storylines that I went over earlier. Nico goes to see Jimmy Pecorino, and he's like, I'm tired of these guys, and there may be a rat, and pretty soon he's pretty sure that the rat is Ray Boccino. Is that just because of his name, Jimmy? But Nico takes out Ray without hesitation because remember, this man is ice cold. He soon gets a call from Gov Bozeman telling him that the government agency has found the third man, Darko Brevich, and as a reward for Nico's good work, they've flown him into Liberty City and are gonna let Nico do whatever he wants to him. Roman thinks he should come along for emotional support. Nico takes this opportunity to reflect on his entire life, seemingly still convinced his pain will die with Darko. When he finally confronts Darko, he learns the horrible truth that Darko sold out his entire squad for $1,000 to buy drugs. Nico is aghast at this revelation, but then Darko makes a very obvious point.
You killed my friends for $1,000.
How much do you charge to kill someone?
So then it is once again on you, the player, to decide whether or not to kill Darko. It is an interesting choice, especially since there aren't any consequences for the player either way, and it doesn't affect the way the rest of the story plays out, so it's purely about which ending feels more right to you. It could be argued that leaving a violent sociopathic murderer like Darko alive to keep doing harm is immoral. I think a lot of people would say it's never okay to kill an unarmed prisoner, no matter what they've done. But is Nico even any better than Darko? Maybe a tiny bit. I doubt he would have betrayed his squad like that, but he still kills indiscriminately. Like all these innocent tourists Nico kills for no reason at all. Or this poor taxi driver just trying to finish up a 14-hour shift and get back to his 5 kids and sick wife. Or this elderly hot dog vendor just 1 week away from his pension. This is some sick shit, Nico. But the real question is, why does Darko look so much like Nico? When I first played this, I thought it was about to be revealed that he was secretly Nico's brother the whole time. It's weird, they look way more alike than Nico and Roman do. Thankfully, that's not what happens, but this of course brings Nico no peace, and he doesn't even want to party with Brucey after the killing. So he just drops Roman off at Brucey's and goes home to drink himself to sleep alone. As the dust settles a few days later, Jimmy Pecorino asks Nico to meet him over at the Bing and tells him he has a big deal in the works with Dmitry Raskolov, and Nico's like, wait, what the hell? No, I fucking hate that guy. But Pecorino's like, you lost my diamonds, ho, you doing it. Nico eventually decides he can just kill Dmitry and go live his best life, but he calls Roman, and Roman's really interested in the money that can be made from the deal because he wants to party. Something to consider. But then Nico talks to Kate, who says, Nico, if you forgive Dmitry and take that money, then you're a fucking sellout and you will not be getting into my pants. So of course this is the final choice the player has to make. If you choose to take the deal with Dmitry and let go of his betrayal, Pecorino gives Nico the cash to pay Dmitry, but wouldn't you know it, Dmitry double-crosses Nico again, but thankfully Nico is able to escape with a big bag of cash. Kate is disappointed by this, and she says she's done with Nico and she's not going to the wedding with him, but he still has the money, which him and Roman are about to take down to Miami and party after the wedding. It's a beautiful ceremony, the whole squad is there, Jacob, Brucey, Bernie, not Packy for some reason. Everyone's so happy, but then Agent 47 shows up, sent by Dmitry to kill Nico. He misses his shot, Nico gets the upper hand pretty quickly. Okay, everything's cool. Wait, no it's not! Roman's fucking dead! After deciding to take the high road, let bygones be bygones, forgive and forget, water under the bridge, he loses the only person in the world that he cares about. Obviously, Nico is not a man to be messed with, and now with nothing left to lose in this world, he decides to murder Dmitry once and for all or die trying. and Pegorino too, because he's basically also a dick. When he needs assistance finding them, who's ready to help at a moment's notice? Why, of course it's Jacob. They track Dimitri and Pegorino to this building. Nico goes in by himself just in time to see the two of them having a discussion, which of course ends with Dimitri betraying Pegorino. He's fucking obsessed with betrayal, this guy. He then flies away in a helicopter. Nico chases him on a boat and starts falling behind, but our boy pulls up in a military attack helicopter, which they use to shoot down Dimitri, who crashes but survives, but only survives briefly as he is soon shot several times by Nico. Obviously it had to be done, but it doesn't bring our boy any peace. During the credits, we do learn that Mallory is pregnant, giving Nico one last thing to live for as he spends the rest of his days contemplating how awful his life is. Holy crap, that made me feel upset. Is this Grand Theft Auto or Grand Theft Sadness? But that's only one of two possible endings. Let's rewind if you'll permit me. I feel like the other ending makes a little bit more sense. If you choose the other path, taking revenge on Dimitri, the ending isn't quite as bleak. Nico ignores Pegorino's persuasion techniques and decides to take this opportunity to murder Dimitri, which goes pretty well. Kate is turned on by this and decides to go to Roman's wedding with Nico. The whole squad is there, except Packy for some reason, although I guess he didn't really know Roman that well. However, Pegorino pulls up and starts unloading on the whole wedding. Luckily, Kate's the only one that's hit. Again, this isn't really that impactful if you didn't go out of your way to hang out with her a bunch in the game, but it does upset Nico enough to go after Pegorino, this time with the help of Jacob and Roman. Killing him, surprisingly, doesn't make things any better, but at least we still have Cousin. Packy and his mom are pretty torn up about Kate, but Roman and Mallory are having a baby. I guess this is the happiest possible ending for a guy like Nico, so we'll call this the good ending. Commercial. Right, so one thing this game is most known for is how much darker the story is than the franchise usually goes. San Andreas was the most recent game in the main series, and that game probably has the wackiest tone of all of them. But there were a few prequels made after San Andreas, and the last one, Vice City Stories, while definitely being more lighthearted than 4, did feel like a first attempt at telling a more mature story in Grand Theft Auto. It was the first one with a protagonist that wasn't super pumped to be shooting people all the time and didn't really want this life, a reluctant protagonist. But Nico is just 1,000 times more interesting to me in every way. If you'll cast your mind back to when I played Vice City Stories, I really didn't care much for Vic Vance at all. Nico has a much more interesting backstory, a more charismatic personality, and he's much less of a dumbass getting taken advantage of all the time. He's not a genius like Dr. Phil, but is clearly more intelligent than the slack-jawed Irish junkies he usually associates with. He has a clear singular goal in mind from minute one, which a lot of these protagonists certainly don't, and it helps this somewhat bloated story not feel too meandering. He's patient, respectful, professional, even a little bit charming. You could totally see him being a good person with a normal life if he had been born into different circumstances. But he's been a soldier since before he was even old enough to play Grand Theft Auto. Killing is like shaking hands to him. The idea of civilian life is more of an abstract concept to a guy like Nico. He never got to be a normal kid, or go to college, or live in his mom's basement like you and I do. All he knows is that he's good at killing people, and people give him money to do it. And you need money to get out of your mom's basement. Okay, now I need some of you to brace yourselves because I have some criticisms to dish out here and there. Overall, this game is phenomenal and as timeless as games get, but for some reason with this one, more than any of the other games, a small but vocal number of its fan base will call you a dumbass, worthless piece of shit James Gunn fanboy for suggesting that GTA 4 may have a single flaw. And to those people I say, hey, you can relax, alright? It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be alright. Gonna be okay. Now, while I do like what they did here with the story and the main character, I'm really glad they didn't stick with this dark tone moving forward. I do wish we had more open-world crime games that took themselves more seriously like this, but I don't really want another GTA like this. I mean, if they were still making like 2 or 3 of these each console generation, then sure, sprinkle in a dark and gritty one from time to time. But if we're only gonna get a new one of these like every 15 years or so, I wouldn't want the next one to be like this. So the tone is definitely not a problem. It's something I like about this game. My biggest problem with the story overall is its pacing. When I was summarizing everything earlier, I was actually utilizing my masterful storytelling skills to cut most of the fat and even embellish a detail or two here and there. Most missions in this game don't really move the main story forward. It's usually a set of sometimes very loosely connected missions given to you by someone until you've done a certain amount of them, which then will culminate in an event that then moves the story forward an inch or two. So few missions in this story are actually about Nico's revenge quest. It's far more often someone blackmailing, extorting, or just paying Nico to do some random crap for them because apparently he needs a ton of money, but it's never explained why. I know you need some funds for a revenge quest, but he keeps accumulating cash and never spends a significant amount of it on anything at any point. Just a couple bucks sometimes for some ammo or a pair of glasses or a burger here and there. I think the even bigger problem though is the way the story missions are presented in the game, because so many missions are available most of the time that you really start to lose track of the threads when moving back and forth. And most of these storylines won't let you continue them until you've done some other thing, and then you can come back later and finish it and then move on to some other story content, most of which is pretty superfluous to the overall overall story of Niko Bellic. And both endings have some issues that need to be addressed. The problem with the revenge ending is that the final mission ends up being super anticlimactic. Killing Pegorino over something that just happened is a pretty unsatisfying way of closing the whole game out. Killing a guy Niko just started beefing with 5 minutes ago doesn't carry the same weight as killing a guy who's been fucking with him the entire game, if you ask me. Dimitri should have been the final villain in either ending. He's such a thorn in your side cocksucker the whole time, causing so much unnecessary grief. Whereas when you end the game killing Pegorino, it was honestly hard to remember which one of the various mob bosses from the game this guy even was. Also, again, Kate dying doesn't do much for me. It is not equal in sadness to the other ending. In fact, I'd say pretty much any other character in that scene would have been a more tragic death. What if Mallory had been the one killed? I, the player, built an attachment to Mallory much in the same way Niko did. She's a cool girl, she's super in love with Roman, who Niko cares about more than anyone in the world, and Roman is someone who I, the player, also built a strong attachment to. Imagine if Roman's pregnant wife was killed because of Niko's decision, a decision Roman was against in the first place. I could totally see him blaming Niko for this and suddenly hating him, causing Niko to lose Roman either way. That would be sad. The only thing that's sad about Kate dying is that she was a nice person and innocent, and sure, that's sad, but how many nice, innocent people does Niko kill just in this game? And not to victim blame, but she's fully aware of the type of people she's associating with. But again, the real problem here is that the story never takes any time to develop her as a character or her relationship with Niko, so unless you did the boring optional dates with her, it doesn't feel nearly as personal when she dies. On the other hand, the deal ending kinda makes Niko look like a gullible idiot for somehow believing Dimitri would do anything other than betray him as hard as possible. Feels so out of character that I have no choice but to assume this ending is non-canon. Also, Roman dies in this ending, which sucks. You don't want that. Of course, if you're playing this for the first time, you don't know how either choice is going to work out, but I still don't see most people picking this ending because taking revenge on Dimitri is far more enticing than rolling over for a bunch of money that you have pretty much nothing to spend it on. But no matter what, this is a strong GTA story. It's certainly a bit disjointed and weirdly paced. I don't think it's the masterpiece of storytelling in video games that a lot of people hype it up to be, but I think the darker tone is perfect for the more realistic approach they were taking. I definitely wouldn't want GTA 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 to go down such a dark path, but I think it's one of this game's biggest strengths. And the atmosphere it provides is so much richer than you usually see in these types of games. And it's not like it's just an absolute downer from start to finish. It's got the highbrow, sophisticated humor the franchise is known for, and one of the more charming protagonists in the series, who also happens to have an extremely dark backstory. So many of the characters feel surprisingly authentic and real, and as messy as it can make the overall narrative, I love getting involved in everyone's insane little stories. Because even though they do drag down the general pace, they exist to give the player a longer campaign. Because the game is fun, and you want it to be more than like 5 hours long, alright dumbass? For real though, this game is fun as hell. While it does lack a lot of the variety of San Andreas, the core gameplay is completely unmatched by the rest of the series. Before I ever played this game, I thought it was pretty much just gonna be the same as GTA 5, but in a different city. I'd heard about the darker story, but I was completely unprepared for how different the whole game would feel. The driving is far more realistic than other Grand Theft Auto games. Not like realism realistic, the suspension can be a little over-exaggerated, but the physics are what really sells the driving. You see, this was the first game to use Rockstar's brand new Rage engines. Sorry, no, this is the second game to use it right after Ping Pong, my bad. And with that new engine, they implemented something called Euphoria. Now, I'm not trying to get overly technical on you, but basically Euphoria makes the physics more realistic and more better. It's truly amazing how dynamic it makes all the gunfights, where the PS2 era had people walk out and stand in place until you just gun them down. In this one, none of the missions will play out the same way twice. Look at an example of the type of moment that just happened in this game thanks to the dynamic physics and AI. That was so awesome, and no part of it was scripted. That's just how the end of this particular mission happened to play out, because this game is good. All the NPCs react accurately when shot, they usually stumble around for a bit before they die, and for my money, sticking with free aim is the way to go. The auto-aim is still really aggressive, which just makes the game either too hard or too easy. When you lock onto someone, you can see this health bar around their aiming reticle, but I think it's way more fun to not be able to see the health bar and not know if they're completely dead yet. Keeps the intensity way up. Unfortunately, there were a few times where I had to use auto-aim, mostly when I was in a mission with a bunch of allies, and I wouldn't know who was who, and I would keep shooting my own guys. But the auto-aim only aims at enemies, so it's good for keeping you from doing that. This is also the first game in the series to implement proper cover shooting. Not bad for a first time, although it is a little annoying how even when you go into aim mode, Nico stays behind cover until you start shooting, so you aren't really able to pop off shots one at a time, which you often need to do to be fully accurate. It'd be better if you actually aimed the gun when you press the aim button, then shot the gun when you press the shoot button, you know what I mean? Also, something that could be considered another step backwards from San Andreas is the lack of weapon variety. That game had way more weapons to choose from. Silenced pistol, dual wielding, combat shotgun, double barrel shotgun, minigun, katana, chainsaw. Oh, none of that fun stuff is here in 4. Melee weapons are just a knife and a bat, and guns are just a basic one and then a better one. Pistol, better pistol. Shotgun, better shotgun. SMG, better SMG. Rifle, better rifle. All very basic, really disappointing, but I do like that you can pick up a brick and throw it at someone in this game. The only way to lose your wanted level back in the day was to get your car resprayed or to go back to the safe house, which was kinda lame. Finally, in this one, you always have the option of trying to outrun the cops. Dodging and weaving through the tight city streets or ducking through alleys on foot is far more fun. Even helicopters are outrunnable as the dense buildings keep them from being able to pursue you too closely. The driving is one of the more divisive aspects of this game, mostly due to the learning curve being much steeper than ever. Before, the mechanics were much more arcadey and super easy to jump into. In this one, not only do you have to be far more deliberate and precise than before, but the way cars handle in this game is noticeably different from vehicle to vehicle, so you have to get somewhat acquainted with each one individually before you can reliably speed around. Personally, when I first played this game, I thought the driving was awful and couldn't understand why anyone thought it would be appropriate for a GTA game. But when you start to get a little deeper in, you start to appreciate how much more control you have over your vehicle. Once you get good, of course, you can be far more precise and much more cooler with the way you skirt about. It's a little exaggerated, but once I got used to it, I spent so much time trying to see what kind of sick moves I could pull off. I couldn't pull off any. The same goes for helicopters, much more unwieldy at first, but highly maneuverable once you have the controls under control. Now, unfortunately, this game does not allow you to fly aeroplanes. Apparently, New York City has a complicated history with airplanes, but it seems like the actual reason they weren't included here was simply because the map is a lot smaller than the last one. That's weak, though. Vice City was even smaller still, and that one had an airplane, but it was slow. Bikes are even more controversial. Motorcycles, I mean, not bicycles. Wait, why the hell are there no bicycles? There's no excuse for this. Planes, I understand. They can make the map feel smaller, and some people might find them offensive, but a bicycle would probably make the map feel even bigger, and you can't do a 911 on a bicycle.
Believe me, I've tried.
Such a bummer that this game doesn't let me recreate my favorite moments from Premium Rush. A movie that I haven't seen. But I have seen The Road Warrior, and I was able to recreate my favorite moment from that movie thanks to a drunk cab driver. Motorcycles are, well, they're slippery, alright? There's no getting around it. No getting around anything on these bikes. You try to drive them and it's all like, whoa, 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 whoa. It's just impossible to get a handle on. Not actually, though. Just like the cars, once you have a little practice on them, you become a master of the road. And their size presents quite a few advantages when trying to escape once you get good. But uh-oh, another issue. Another complaint about a lack of variety. Yeah, unfortunately, novelty vehicles are almost non-existent in this game. San Andreas was full of them. Lawnmower, hot dog van, quad, combine harvester, tractor, hovercraft, construction, Zamboni, dune buggy, RV, Mario Kart. The list literally goes on. I do understand why something like the jetpack wouldn't work for what they were going for in this game, but some of these others would have fit in just fine. There isn't even a tank? The only slightly goofy stuff is like this airport thing, or like a bus, or a garbage truck. The hearse was fun, I guess, and there's a forklift, a limo. The ice cream truck is cool, but nothing crazy. I do like that they have an updated version of the Mafia Sentinel. Kinda. It's only a 2-door when the older one was famously a 4-door. And you can't even customize cars like you could in San Andreas. All you can do is get them resprayed in a different random color. You can drive a tugboat, that's kinda cute, but you can't drive a monster truck or a hot rod or a golf cart. Even Vice City had a golf cart. Ballad of Gay Tony does have a golf cart, but we're not talking about that yet. But having an epic sandbox to mess around in just wasn't the goal here. This game's all about getting good in a way that none of the other games in the franchise have even tried. You could really master the controls and mechanics in a way that hasn't been possible before or since. And the precise, challenging but fair gameplay, combined with the still to this day very impressive euphoria physics, makes almost every moment in this game spicy as heck. Which is important when the mission design is so weak. Yeah, I said it. This is what I consider to be the game's biggest flaw. I know some people don't want me talking about things that's bad, but like I said, it's gonna be okay. Why don't you take a deep breath and watch the following ad. This video is sponsored by Rox. Rox. Need something done? Use Rox. Want to hit someone? It's better with a rock. Need a driveway? Use a bunch of rocks. Cooking a pizza? Cook it on a rock. That's 5 different uses for rocks, and I'm just getting started. Put rocks in your hair. Drive a car on it. Use it as a conversation piece. It even works on red wine stains. Get 36 rocks now, plus 10 bonus rocks for only $12.99 using the offer code 46rocks for $12.99 at checkout. And make sure to mention my name to support the channel. Thanks for watching the ad, guys. When I think back to the story missions in Grand Theft Auto 4, in my mind they always go something like this. Walk into a room and someone gives Niko a job for money, drive to a dingy building and shoot a bunch of people, then leave the building and escape the police. I know that's not every mission, but that's just like what comes to my mind when I think Grand Theft Auto 4 mission. They kinda blend together into a big gray mush. But despite this being my biggest complaint, it's not something that really drags the game down too much since, like I said, the mechanics and physics are so dynamic that they save the game from its own weak level design. And also, again, they never play out the same way twice, which is awesome. It just would have been cool if this game had kinda upped it after all the creative and inspired level design in San Andreas. I have to kinda think a little bit harder to think up some unique and interesting missions in this game, not that there aren't any. The first one that comes to mind is definitely 3-Leaf Clover, the bank robbery gone wrong, where you have to shoot your way through tons and tons of cops all through the city streets and alleyways and through the subway. Museum Piece, the diamond sale, also gone wrong, where you have to shoot your way through this highly destructible museum. Late Checkout, where you shoot your way through this fancy apartment building, but all these are just really fun shootouts. There are also a lot that are fun and noteworthy because of the unique tasks and parameters of the missions. Hating the Haters, where you have to protect Florian from a violent homophobic hater who's been beating him up when he jogs in the park, and it ends with Niko and the hater getting into a Vespa chase through the park. Fun stuff. The one where you kidnap Gracie Ancelotti, the mob daughter, under the guise of a test drive, but she's resistant to this, so she keeps grabbing the wheel and trying to mess you up, and you have to keep the car straight while she's jerking the wheel to and fro. And also don't slow down too much or she'll get out and escape. I like the one where you have to set up an interview at this law firm and go to the interview and cap the guy just when the moment's right. And you can shoot your way out of the building, which is super fun, or you can just blast open the window in his office and jump out. And the game never really tells you this is even an option. There's just kind of little secrets and shortcuts like this for you to find in so many of these missions. A ton of the side quests in this game are made to be at the same level of quality as the story missions. Races, assassinations, character encounters barely even feel like side content other than the fact that they don't push the story forward. Again, usually what makes these missions fun is the core gameplay, not necessarily the level design, but unlike the PS2 games, there aren't any that I outright hated. No dumbass, untested, random bullshit missions, but there are a few where I would have liked some checkpoints. Oh wait, another complaint from whiny little bitch boy, fake-ass baby gamer, hasn't finished Bloodborne, barely touched Ninja Gaiden 2, thinks Mario is confusing, never played Halo, hasn't heard of Zelda, wants everything to be handed to him, never worked a day in his life, can't even find Morrowind at GameStop, little 4th grader bitch. Look, all those things are true, and I've gone over this before, but I'll go over it again real quick. I have no problem having to replay a hard mission over and over until I get it right. The issue here is that pretty much all of these have a whole build-up before the hard part, and it just kills the momentum having to replay the slow-ass drive through the city every single time. Having to replay it once can be fun, because on your second time playing the mission, the characters usually have a completely different conversation than they did the first time, which is, you know, that's interesting, that's a fun thing. But then after that, if you try a third time, they just drive in silence the rest of the time, and plus, that's not all the missions, because there are plenty where you're just alone, talking to nobody. A lot of people seem to have trouble with this mission, Snowstorm, which has a really hard shootout on a small island where enemies have tons and tons of vantage points, and it's really hard to tell where they all are, and then you have to escape the police with like 4 stars, and there's only one road off the island. What's funny is that you can also find this boat here off to the side and just cruise out of there without any hassle, and I guess I accidentally found this on my first playthrough, so this is just how I've always played this mission. I honestly never even considered trying to escape in a car because, I mean, yeah, it sounds way harder. However, I thought I would try it with a car for this playthrough because I'm doing it for the video, and it wasn't too hard because I am highly skilled at this point. But what I'm trying to say is that this mission is a really difficult shootout, a shootout where people are positioned all around you, and then during the second half, most of the cops have body armor, and then you have a really difficult car chase after that, and if you die at any point, you have to do it all again. Every single part of it. Sure, but the worst part is that you also have to drive all the way back there each time, which is a whole ordeal. You have to cross like 5 bridges to get from the start of the mission to the location where the mission actually takes place. You really should just be able to start the mission over from where the actual mission starts, not have to redo the tedious preamble every time. This was somewhat acceptable in like 2002, but a few years into the 7th generation, no checkpoints feels a little bit behind the times. However, I'll say I am happy that the game finally lets you restart a mission instantly after you die, which is definitely something. But you don't get back the ammo you used on the mission before you died, so sometimes you do still have to take a minute to resupply, which is, of course, just tedious, and restarting still very often requires a lot of pointless driving across the map. Now let's talk about the map. It's crazy to me that they went for this fully metropolitan map where nearly 100% of it is densely packed with buildings. It's a pretty strong contrast to the diverse cities of San Andreas connected by various flavors of sprawling countryside and charming little towns. In a lot of ways, I think deciding to go smaller after San Andreas is a really bold move. New generation, fresh start, etc., making characters look and move a lot more like real people, what with the mocap and the graphics and the polygons and the rendering density and the anti-texture map aliasing of the Xbox 360 technology, brand new computer-generated vehicle building methods, and high-definition New York City graphics allowing for an unprecedented level of realism and detail. Still to this day, even 17 years later, you'd be hard-pressed to find a video game world on this scale with this level of detail, even from Rockstar. Yeah, sure, GTA 5 has a way bigger map in terms of pure surface area, but there's so much empty space. Red Dead 2 also has a huge map with a shocking amount of detail for a game set mostly in nature, but that game's set mostly in nature. Funnily enough, I do think the main city from Red Dead 2, Saint Denis, is by far the most dense and detailed city Rockstar have ever created. But it's also really small. GTA 4's Liberty City can look a little small when viewed at a distance, but when you're driving through these streets, especially on your first playthrough, you can get really lost in the sprawling urban maze. I've sadly still never been to New York, but this game makes me feel like I has. It's not just about throwing in a few famous landmarks and a couple of copy and paste skyscrapers, it's the immense detail of every single building. Pick a random building in the city. You can tell when it was built, what they're used for, how they've been treated over the years. So many of them with decades, even centuries worth of history from a city that goes back to the very beginnings of the United States. You can see where the streets in Algonquin, the game stand-in for the island of Manhattan, are designed in an almost perfect grid, as this part of the city was planned out very deliberately. But if you venture out to the other boroughs, you can see road layouts that make zero practical sense and would never have been placed that way by any respectable city planner. These roads were basically planned by wildlife, game trails made by animals, then walked on and solidified by humans, who then began riding horses on them, then more horses, then horses pulling carriages, then early automobiles, then the 70s when everyone had a car, to modern day where you look at one of these spots and you can't help but try to understand how this possibly could have come to be, and think about all the people and animals and things that have walked or driven or ridden over this one spot. Then you get even deeper into thinking about all the creatures that could have walked on this very same path in the Paleolithic age and so forth, when the whole place was Pangea. You start to think about the paths you've walked in your own life, and the paths not taken. You think about the first organisms on Earth swimming along the same path when everything was underwater. When the ancient life forms of this planet first gazed upon this future Brooklyn intersection, was it in a completely different part of the world due to continental drift? Is the same place still the same place if that place is in a different place? Does any place still count as the same place since the Earth itself is not only spinning but also flying through space? Meaning you will never again end up in truly the same place as you ever were before? At the end of the day, we're all headed to the same place. Hell, all we really get to choose is what our path there looks like, and it's probably going to involve some nonsensical intersections, but also some very simple intersections, sometimes even a freeway. If you hadn't bared right instead of turned right that day, thus winding up at the wrong Denny's, setting into motion a string of events that would lead to you becoming incarcerated, would it have actually mattered, or would everything have gone the same in your life even if you had made the correct turn on that fateful autumn evening? Are our lives simply the product of a higher entity's grand design? Is everything just random? It's the unknown that defines our existence. We're constantly searching, not only for answers to our questions, but for new questions. So because this is just one city, there's really no way to capture the variety of San Andreas in a map like this. And to me at first it seemed like the map was just row after row of gray skyscrapers, but if you look around a bit, you'll happen upon, for example, this giant globe. Or perhaps a traditional diner. Architecture that blends the old with the new. An entire working subway system with detailed train stations and realistic routes. The train does not go to New Jersey, just like in real life. I'm assuming, again, I've never been to New York. A lot of the bridges require you to stop and pay a toll to pass, or you'll get the cops on you. And here's a cool detail, you can actually bypass the toll if you're driving an emergency vehicle. Isn't that fun? Corner stores, hot dog vendors, bars, banks, fast food restaurants, clothing stores, offices, Gothic churches, luxury condos, housing projects, projects, modern apartment buildings, crack dens, comedy clubs, suburban neighborhoods with fat houses and big front yards, the Empire State Building, Coney Island, Times Square, the Statue of Liberty, which has Hillary Clinton's face in this version and also this horrifying beating heart on the inside, Central Park, the Brooklyn Bridge, Sandwich Shop from The Sopranos, Flying Saucers from the end of Men in Black, Sanctium Sanctorium from Doctor Strange, countless other famous buildings and landmarks I'm sure people more familiar with the city would recognize, all recreated with the same high attention to detail you now expect. They let you swim again, which I like, but you can't go underwater, but actually I don't mind that because in San Andreas swimming underwater was pretty lame. It was a huge, slow, boring, empty space with only a handful of stupid collectibles and maybe a dolphin or turtle from time to time if you're lucky, and that woozy mission where you have to swim underwater a bunch sucks, and having to do a bunch of diving and surfacing to build enough lung capacity to be able to access that stupid woozy mission is the most boring thing ever. So I'm actually fine with all that not being here, and the water looks really, really good, especially for the time. I mean, it's filthy, I wouldn't want to touch it, but it looks so much more realistic. Minor things like doors, windows, light poles, benches, trash cans, sidewalk tiles, all having accurate proportions, makes it all so much more effective at convincing your subconscious that this is a real place you've stepped into, not just a video game map. The older games were certainly a bit lackluster in this regard. However, you see, you can design and put together an amazing map, but then you can still fumble the bag in the second half. If the way the player interacts with the map doesn't feel real, then the illusion will not take hold. Consider, if you will, Watch Dogs 2. In my opinion, it's right up there with the best recreations of cities in games. I've actually been around San Francisco quite a lot, so I can attest to the accuracy a lot more accurately than I can with New York. The detail's there, the scale is there, the accuracy is there, but when I run into a group of people and they just behave like a brick wall performing an animation, or when I hit another car at 1,000,000 miles an hour, but nobody flips over or flies out the windshield or even dies, and the car is barely damaged, well, major cracks start to form in the illusion of that world. The realistic physics and the generally bug-free state Rockstar releases their games in, initially at least, make the world feel so tactile, you can really feel the weight of every step you take. And obviously, realistic physics make the game more realism, and more realism is more immersive. Are you starting to get it? This game has one of the best drunk modes I've ever seen. If you've never been super drunk, like can hardly stand up drunk, like fucked up, it feels pretty much exactly like this. Something huge that I think goes overlooked a lot is how much the default speed being walking contributes to the immersion, because normally when you're out and about in real life, you're walking, not running, so walking feels more like real life, and allows you to take in the world as just another inhabitant. I mean, all games pretty much allow you to walk, but most of the time you usually have to balance the thumbstick just right to get to walking speed, and then it makes walking harder than running, and walking being harder than running is not immersive. Going for a stroll is immersive. Navigating your way around the city is made much easier with the implementation of guided waypoints. You could set destinations in some of the older ones, but they didn't guide you there, they just pointed you in the right direction. I've heard people say that this distracts from the visuals and the world because you're just looking at the corner of the screen the whole time, but I personally think it's a lot less distracting than having to constantly reference a pause menu or a paper map. Just like in San Andreas, you can walk into buildings to buy food and clothes and such, but it's completely seamless now. No more black loading screen trying to kill my flow. And there are actually a lot of buildings from the story mode you can enter in free roam and have a little fun, massacre a few people. You can go to the strip club, you can't go to the motorcycle club or the nightclub just yet, but you can go to the comedy club and catch actual stand-up from actual famous comedians Ricky Gervais and Cat Williams. This is fun. Ricky Gervais has this bit where he makes fun of fat people as if he's not one. I mean, he's no Steven Seagal, but I wouldn't exactly call him a thin man. Let me know in the comments if you agree, or feel free to share some general thoughts on either Ricky Gervais or Steven Seagal. NPC behavior's a big step up. They have some crazy realistic animations that make you think, wow, is that a real person? Like how they run away when it rains, or put their newspaper over their head or whatever, like when it rains. There's far more visual variety amongst them, so you don't feel like you're walking past the same person 10 times, usually. Alright, here we're finding the... Wait a second, that's Tommy Vercetti. Yo, Tommy Vercetti! Wait, is that... oh no, it's just some fat ass. That's not him. Okay, I gotta go find the... Hey, whoa, is that Tommy Vercetti? Yo, Tommy Vercetti! And additionally, the atmosphere also plays a huge role in immersion. You can't just have blank, sunny blue sky like they did in the definitive editions. They did finally fix that, I should mention, which is a good example of what I'm talking about. If you want to transport a player's mind to another place, the lighting must be deliberate. It can't just be generic-ass daytime. This game is mostly thought of as being pretty colorless, which is the general vibe. The foggy nights, the rainy days, the yellowish, greenish, brownish filter over the the whole thing, it's very moody and dark, which naturally corresponds with the game's tone. But we also get treated to our fair share of beautiful sunsets, bright, pleasant afternoons, and mesmerizing city lights. The aesthetic is generally on the darker side, which I don't always love. You can increase the saturation in the menu if you want to make it a little more colorful, but the atmosphere in this game is so intentional and artistic that even though I'm not always the biggest fan, it feels so wrong to alter it. The menu itself and the overall interface is a lot cleaner, it's not as loud and busy as the PS2 games, it's nice and neat. Maybe doesn't have the same character as the older ones, but it looks a lot more like an official city map or something you might find on a municipal website, and it somewhat represents New York City subway map signage. You still with me? Now let's not forget how important sound design is. The audio that's layered into your earballs from nearby cars, trains, machinery, footsteps, conversations, not bicycles, is also a bit under-discussed when talking about what makes this world feel so real, but it really is the glue that holds every other aspect of the map design together and solidifies the feeling of existing in a real place. Convincing your subconscious that there's all types of activity happening all around you, so many people on every block, each part of town telling its own story. Now let's take a listen to the various ambiances we're treated to throughout the city.
Is it terrorist?
Ah, just beautiful. But do you know what my favorite sound of the city is, dear viewer? It's when I hop in a car and it starts going, back in the New York, back in the New York, back. Oh, you know that's right, we haven't talked about the soundtrack. Are you ready, kids? My first experience with this game was the 2018 updated version where they cut out a lot of songs, and this led me to feel that the soundtrack wasn't very strong. So I feel like such a special boy now with my original copy with the full soundtrack because wow, it's actually so good. It doesn't have the poppy appeal of the Vice City soundtrack or of course the variety of the San Andreas soundtrack, but like every other aspect of this game, it's more focused and specific than anything we've seen before. It feels so tied in with the time and place it's set. I mean, sure, you could say that about pretty much all the soundtracks, but those games were generally trying to be more of a pastiche of an era rather than an authentic representation. Did you know that this game came out 17 years ago, and that Vice City was only set 16 years ago when it came out, meaning that the 2008 setting of this game is actually older than the 1986 setting was when Vice City came out? Feel old yet? It's not really the biggest pop hits of the time, but it's all music that fits the New York City vibe to a T. This is not the Southern California chill-out mix of San Andreas, this is tough stuff. And since this is modern day, and they're not trying to evoke a certain time period, they can use music from any time period. Most of the best stations in this game are either music that was already old in 2008, underground stuff I wasn't super familiar with, or foreign language stuff I never heard in my life. Liberty Rock, like they play all kinds of different music that all vaguely falls under the umbrella of rock, but you have a whole bunch of different artists here that I personally feel don't belong together on the same playlist. It's a lot of different subgenres with music from wildly different eras of rock, kind of haphazardly thrown together, ranging from the late 60s all the way up until the late 90s. The station does have a lot of the best music in the game, it just doesn't feel as thoughtfully curated as the other stations do. Because like there are two other rock stations in this game that do have a more specific focus and play more niche music, or take for example a great station such as Classics 104.1, another one of my favorites, just old school New York hip-hop. Not bouncing around a whole different bunch of eras and subgenres, it knows exactly what it is.
You like jazz?
Jazz Nation Radio may not be the type of music one would associate with GTA because jazz is classy and calm. This kind of jazz is, at least. Makes you feel like you're standing there all fancy sipping a martini. I mean, talk about immersion. I tell you, there was a moment in this game where I was listening to the jazz radio station while going over the bridge one night, and for the briefest split second, my brain went, hey, I'm in New York right now. In fact, one of my favorite activities in this game was to hop in a cab at night, flip on JNR, and just take in the sights while you're being moved calmly through the city. Oh yeah, this game includes taxis that you can actually ride in rather than just being able to steal. It's a brilliant way to throw in an immersive fast travel system, but of course you don't have to use them for fast travel, you can also use them for jazz. There's such an interesting combination of genres on this soundtrack. I've barely touched on most of the stations, but I also wasn't listening to the other stations very much, and I don't want to waste your time, which is why I keep these videos lean and mean and short and only hit you with the hard facts. So let's round out the radio topic with my favorite station in the game, Vladivostok FM. This is the GTA 4 radio station, and the best music in the game.
The only thing is that all the songs are in Russian.
Yeah, the songs are all like European or German or some shit, which you'd think would be unbearable, but this turned out to be the most hardcore, gangster, about to commit crimes music I've ever heard in my life. My only problem with the station was that I always wanted to sing along with the music, but I couldn't understand the lyrics. This is definitely the station Nico would actually be listening to while he's out and about. It's perfect for getting the adrenaline up before a big job, or for escaping the police, or for just driving around showing the neighborhood you are not to be fucked with. Also, there's the talk radio, which I never got too into before. It can be funny for a minute or two, but usually not much longer than that. However, I would say this has the best talk radio stations in any GTA so far. Just a lot funnier, there are a bunch of great guest stars and hosts, and hey, it feels a lot more authentic, what do you know? The journey. Also, music is the music from the game. A short while ago, I briefly considered that Liberty City Stories had the best theme song in all of GTA, and the answer is no. See, well, that song was sick as fuck. If you listen to the whole thing more than like once in a row, it just kind of feels like the same bit over and over again. Like during the closing credits of that game where they have to play the song like 12 times, and it's just like bang, dang, dang, ba-da-dang, dang, ba-da-dang, dang, dang. It's like it's fine, but then it just goes on repeat with the whole bang, bang, dang. So many times, I feel like I'm watching the Batman. You know, it's great, but it gets old kind of fast. So I've concluded that this game, GTA 4, is the one with the best theme song. It starts a little suspenseful as you see Nico for the first time and watch this mysterious boat approach the lights of the city, and by the time the title card hits, it is 100% clear that you are about to get into some serious business. There's some other score throughout the game too. They play a little music at the end of each mission, which they did in the PS2 ones, but in those it was always the same tune. In this one it changes depending on the mission. If it's a simple short mission, it's just a little... But if it's a big epic mission, it ends with a whole... Or if it's a sad mission, it ends with like a... There are like 30 different tunes that can play as a nice little button on the end of each mission and to remind you how you're supposed to be feeling. There's also the loading screen music, which really does a lot to make you feel like a bad little boy about to get into some trouble, and combined with this cool-ass art creates a very rare instance where I actually wanted the loading screens to be longer. I literally can't think of any other game where that's the case. And it's perfectly in keeping with the game's tone and grounded setting. San Andreas let you make CJ look a billion different ways. This game has a few outfits and hats, but Nico always looks like Nico, because Nico is always Nico. This is a great microcosm of what the game is going for. Not the open-ended freedom all the others were striving for, but making you feel like an inhabitant of an authentic place and putting you in the shoes of a guy in a real crime story. Still allowing you to get into some trouble, but not in such an over-the-top way as the other entries. And in this regard, I think they knocked it out of the park. Mechanics, physics, map design, story, music, and visuals all synergize beautifully to create the most focused, grounded, and realistic Grand Theft Auto to date. It's a shame there are so few games in the gritty and realistic open-world crime genre, but like I said, with installments in this franchise being so infrequent, I think bigger and funner is going to be the right direction for new entries, and leave room for other developers to step into this space and make more games that hit like GTA 4. And that's GTA 4 for ya, but we're not nearly done yet, buddy, because you know I copped that complete edition. This game got 2 separate DLCs. This generation was the peak of downloadable content. Before microtransactions and premium currency, this was what was often considered to be disgusting, greedy over-monetization. Like the stupid Mass Effect 1 everyone hated, or how Call of Duty Zombies was basically nothing without shelling out for the season pass, which nearly doubled the cost of the game. But nowadays, most people only remember the good stuff, because there was so much more of it back then. You could get a super fleshed out, high quality expansion for less money than a Hank Hill Fortnite skin is gonna run ya. And these episodes from Liberty City are certainly high quality. Not just mission packs, but almost full games in and of themselves, with their own protagonists, stories, tones, aesthetics, side quests, activities, mechanics, etc. Just that they use the same map and the engine as the base game, and that obviously they're shorter than your average AAA game, which again is fair for the price. So now let's get cooking with the first of the two. The Lost and the Damned. It's all like hardcore biker shit. It's fucking It's got like even grittier aesthetic, and it's like this super yellowy, super grainy filter over the whole game. It's like pause menu, the UI, it's all like it's like all grimy, and it's all red, and it's got like a biker font. And it's like everyone's all mean and pissed off. Open on a shot with these fucking hard motherfuckers cruising around showing everyone how fucking angry they are. Yeah, and here's the boys. Sound off, boys. We got Johnny Kleebitz, vice president, and our protagonist. Yeah, and there's a truck. Fuck you, truck. Yeah, Jimmy Fitzgerald, treasurer. Quick cameo from Nico, bumping into someone on the street. Brian Jeremy, club secretary. Terry Thorpe, sergeant at ass walking by. Jason Michaels, enforcer. Clay Simmons, road captain. They all pull up to this meeting between a parole officer and the newly freed Billy Gray, president. Grand Theft Auto, The Lost and Damned. This is a story about Johnny Kleebitz, or Klebitz, or Jonathan. He was kind of a tertiary character in the main story, did a few jobs with Nico, then disappeared when the diamond sale went wrong. You never found out what happened to him, but in this you do. Johnny is the vice president of their organization, the Lost Motorcycle Club, and he's been running things while Billy's been in jail. We catch up with the gang right as Billy's getting released from jail. You think everyone would be happy and celebrating, but they're too hardcore for that. See, while Billy's been away, Johnny of course had to take charge, and the one thing he did was offload Billy's bike to a rival gang, the Angels of Death, as both a peace offering and a way to help pay for Billy's legal fees. It's implied that Billy did some pretty fucked up stuff to the members of the Angels, unnecessarily putting the Lost in some hot water and costing them some sweet cash. Johnny felt that giving the Angels Billy's bike was completely justified, but Billy sure doesn't see it that way. He convinces Johnny to go retrieve the bike, even though it'll break the peace between the two gangs, kind of spitting on everything Johnny accomplished while Billy was away. Later, everyone's chilling out, but since Billy's just a violent, unstable psycho, he starts some shit with Johnny for no reason. They get all up in each other's face, but before they get to throwing hands, some of the guys from the Angels of Death show up to tell them it's really not cool what they did, killing everyone and stealing the bike, and they're not friends anymore, causing Billy to shoot one of them in the back as they walk away, which causes more shooting on motorcycles. A couple days later, the gang receives word that one of their members, Jason Michaels, was killed by some European, who was hired to take him out because Jason was banging a Russian mobster's daughter, which we know to be true from the main game. But then later, Billy tries to walk it back and says, actually, it was the Angels that hired the European. Let's go kill him, Johnny! Highly suspect, but regardless, the Lost go after the Angels for this, causing even more tension between them. And during the attack, Billy and this other loser, Brian, steal a big stash of horse from the Angels, which causes Johnny to further question Billy's motives. A deal is set up for Johnny to sell the stuff where he's introduced to Nico and Playboy X. Johnny, of course, had no idea that Nico had anything to do with Jason's death, so they all go to the deal together, which turns out to be a setup by the cops. We already know this, but Johnny does make it out with the product, which he is soon informed originally belonged to the Triads, who are not small time. The boys decide it's best to return the stuff to the Triads, and this part gets a little convoluted, but I'm pretty sure what happens here is that Billy told Johnny that the Triads would be paying to get their own product back, knowing that the Triads wouldn't be doing that and would actually find this to be a huge slap in the face and would instead kill Johnny and his boy Jim, who he also sent on the deal, so that Johnny won't be around to question Billy's authority or think about plotting to take over, which he was never really trying to do in the first place. Only Johnny and Jim are able to shoot all the Triads before all the Triads shoot them, and all the shooting attracts police attention, and when the police show up, I'm pretty sure they arrest Billy somewhat randomly because he just happened to be standing outside, and I guess this makes him think that Johnny set him up?
You set me up, Johnny!
Then I guess the cops just take him and leave and don't worry about all the shooting that was the reason they came down there. So the cops are gone, and Johnny and Jim go outside to meet Brian, who I guess was able to hide when the cops came, so Brian accuses accuses Johnny of setting up Billy because he thinks Johnny just wants to be in charge, which he is now, causing a massive rift in the gang and basically starting a civil war. So this means Billy's plan to make sure that Johnny would never be able to overthrow him ended up with Johnny doing exactly that without even trying. I love it. The Civil War is not good for the gang, meaning Johnny, of course, has to now do a bunch of jobs for a bunch of people. He ends up helping his terrible girlfriend Ashley a bunch. Johnny cares about her a lot, but she's pretty much just using him for drug money and to get her out of trouble from time to time. One of the ways he gets her out of trouble is by doing a job for someone to repay Ashley's debt. That someone turns out to be Dimitri, and the job turns out to be kidnapping Roman, which of course is completely unrelated to Johnny's previous dealings with Nico, which again was unrelated to Nico having killed Johnny's friend. The kidnapping goes well, and Ashley's square for the time being. Ray Bacino stops by a group hang to tell the guys he doesn't like the whole Lost MC Civil War thing, so he tells Johnny where he can find Brian so Johnny can put an end to things, which he then does, gunning Brian down with little care. Soon Johnny has to do another favor for Ray. This time it's because Ashley asked him to, because she's definitely not sleeping with him, but when Johnny talks to Ray, it turns out to be a pretty lucrative offer. He wants Johnny to steal a shipment of diamonds from a guy called Gay Tony. With a little bit of effort, Johnny gets control of the diamonds and stashes them in some garbage bags around the city for Ray's boys to pick up later. When it comes time to sell the diamonds, Johnny meets back up with Nico at the museum to perform the sale, but of course it's interrupted when Gay Tony's friend pops up out of nowhere and starts blasting everyone. Nico and Johnny are separated, and Johnny gets away with Ray's money, causing himself and Jim to get kidnapped by Ray. After a bit of a squabble, the boys make it out of Ray's basement, but our old buddy Jim was not able to survive the injuries he sustained, which is of course sad. Ashley's the one to tell Johnny this, and then she's like, you know what, I'm not talking to Ray anymore because of this. I'm through with Ray, Johnny. But she goes on to tell Johnny that Billy in prison is about to spill everything to the feds, and she also says, Johnny, I love you, but then Johnny's like, you know what, get the hell out of my life. But don't worry, Ashley and Johnny's story will continue in GTA 5, no spoilers. Right now he has to figure out what he's gonna do to keep Billy from spilling the beans to the feds, but then it hits him. The solution was so obvious. All you gotta do is gather the remaining boys and do a head-on assault of the prison. Why aren't more people doing this? And once our handful of bikers are done sieging the prison with a might equal to a large army of Mordor's finest, they finally get to Billy and Johnny shoots him down with no fanfare. And I guess they all get away with this because of this politician guy who Johnny's been helping throughout the game, who I didn't mention, thus ending all their problems. When they return to their clubhouse, they find it completely destroyed, but they just decide, fuck it, burn the place down, and go to start new lives out west, never to forget the sacrifice of their fallen brothers. Urgh! This is a nice, tight little biker story, if that's your thing. I was kind of making fun of all the edginess that tries to take the dark and brooding vibe from the main story to the next level, but also a lot of these guys are pretty ridiculous and over the top in real life. Bikers, I mean. Not that they aren't still terrifying. Please don't tell any bikers I said this, but I do find it silly to put this much work into trying to look tough. That being said, I'd be a filthy liar if I told you I didn't find this game to be legitimately badass. I felt like a modern-day cowboy. New York City is definitely not the first setting that jumps to mind when you think of a biker gang video game, but the contrast of these civilized city folk yuppies and these filthy rough-and-tumble bikers gives a real outlaw vibe to the whole experience. To me, a lot of this felt like it was a big early inspiration for Red Dead Redemption 2. The whole Gang of Outlaws comparison is obvious, and the way riding a motorcycle is a bit like riding a horse, and riding information felt a lot like riding with your boys in Red Dead 2, or like how in both you play as the second most important guy in the gang and the leader who hates society, used to be trusted, and then turns out to be an evil asshole and betrays you. I got attached to Johnny's bike much in the same way I got attached to my noble steed in Red Dead 2. Also, the clubhouse reminded me a whole lot of the camp from Red Dead 2. It's like a home base where everyone in your gang is hanging out, and you can go around and do different activities, and you sleep there. Not as fleshed out, but definitely the same idea. Is anybody with me on that? Am I stupid? Johnny's a surprisingly sympathetic protagonist. The whole tough guy thing is always a little silly, but him trying his best to deal with the responsibilities he never asked for while constantly being undermined by his own people makes me feel bad for him. And the way he's severely taken advantage of by his girlfriend is pretty tragic, but the way he steps up and takes charge makes me have respect for him, and the way he makes tough choices makes me have respect for him, and the way he finally cuts off Ashley makes me have respect for him, even though him and Ashley are back together again in the next game, which is of course what leads to Johnny's fascinating arc in GTA 5, no spoilers. Yeah, this is naturally a much shorter experience than the main game, but this is kinda good as they don't have to stretch out the story as much, and fewer missions allows them to put more attention into each one. I mean, sure, there are plenty of missions that are just ride around on your bike, then shoot people on foot, then get back on your bike and shoot people on your bike, but the bike riding and the new gameplay features make the more forgettable missions still feel fresh, and they don't overstay their welcome like a lot of the main story did. Is it just me, or was this game extra explodey? Like red barrels everywhere, the explosive explodey barrels, and cars just exploding way easier. The cool new weapons do a lot to spice up gameplay. New pistol, it's automatic, it looks cool, way more fun than the other two. The grenade launcher, a great alternative to the RPG. Bet Clyde wishes he had one of these bad boys, huh? A pool cue to whack people with. The assault shotgun, which you can just devastate a group of dudes with. Pipe bombs, which are pretty much the same as grenades. And my personal favorite, the double barrel shotgun. A little clunky to use on foot, but it's the only shotgun you can use while driving. But only if you're driving a motorcycle. And it's extremely deadly in vehicle combat, which really encourages riding a motorcycle. Because, the motorcycles are a little harder to control, and most people would rather just drive a car since they're so much safer and easier to control. And to those people I say, get good. If you play The Lost and Damned riding around in a car the whole time,
you'll think you have experienced it, but you'll be cheated.
And really, I never wanted to be driving anything other than Johnny's signature bike. Riding another man's hog just didn't feel right. Your buddy Clay can deliver you free bikes whenever you want, but I just wanted old Bessie, so I didn't really call him much. I did frequently call the other guy Terry for weapons though, because none of the new weapons are available at the normal gun shops. You have to buy them from his van. You could do this in the base game with Jacob, but he didn't have any extra weapons, just better prices. Couple of cool weapons. This is something I wanted from the main game. So happy to have these here. I'm glad you did this. Thank you. But you know what I was most grateful for in The Lost and Damned? That's right. It's that we finally, after years and years of baby steps, after 9 games, across 3 generations, they have finally graced us with checkpoints. Some of these games had like 1 checkpoint in the final mission, including GTA 4 main game, but having only 1 kinda made it even more annoying that they weren't in the rest of the game, like they knew checkpoints might be needed in missions, but only put in 1 in every couple of games. I've made my thoughts on this extremely clear. I want checkpoints to skip through the boring parts. I complained about having to restart each mission from the beginning in the base game. I complained about how you have to take a taxi back to the missions in Vice City Stories. I complained about how you had to physically drive all the way back to the mission marker before restarting in Liberty City Stories and in San Andreas. Vice City actually has the cab thing too, but I complained about having to drive back in GTA 3. And I complained when GTA 1 didn't let you restart the missions at all and just told you to fuck off when you failed. But I complain no longer, because they have actually, finally implemented reliable checkpoints into the story missions. This is as much of a revelation as when they finally included a map in Vice City. It's a revelation! This game also includes its own set of side activities. Character encounters, which are similar to the story missions, bike races, where you race other bikes on your bike. These are fun because you can hit other people with a bat. And gang wars, where you fight other gangs for territory to earn money. The main story missions don't give you as much money, so you're more encouraged to engage with a little side content. The safe houses are terrible, even worse than the main game. There are only 2 of them, and not only are they fucking filthy, but they're both on the same island, pretty much right next to each other. Even GTA 3 had a safe house on every island. I know manually saving isn't nearly as important anymore, what with the autosave, but sometimes I want to create separate save files, or sleep to advance time. Part 5, Terry and Clay. After a certain point, you get your boys Terry and Clay on call to help at any time, during side missions, open world roaming, during story missions. The difficulty's notably higher than in the main game, which feels like they're nudging you to use Terry and Clay as much as possible. You are also heavily nudged to do so by constant aggressive texts from Jim telling you, hey man, give Terry and Clay a call if you need any help. Hey Johnny, don't forget to use Terry and Clay. Johnny, why haven't you called Terry and Clay? Call Terry and Clay, Johnny, I swear to God. And on some missions, Terry and Clay will accompany you automatically. Sometimes you automatically bring the whole squad with you, and you feel like a pretty darn powerful force rolling into a situation with a bunch of MC brothers by your side.
So say we all!
Did that biker just drop a "so say we all"? Are you telling me I have to bring up Edward James Olmos in yet another GTA video?
So say we all!
So say we all!
So say we all! So say we all!
So say we all!
So say we all!
Edward James Olmos was of course in Battlestar Galactica, and so was this guy who played Dakota Johnson's dad in the 50 Shades of Grey movies. But of course Dakota Johnson's dad in real life is not this guy, but is in fact the one and only Don Johnson from Miami Vice. with Edward James Olmos. This DLC also made significant changes to the radio, but they should have called Terry and Clay for backup on this one because the radio is actually a huge downgrade. Now, songs like Wanted Dead or Alive and Renegade and a few others are great biker songs and some fun additions, but I think we lost more than we gained here. My two favorite stations are basically completely gone. JNR, the jazz station, is just removed. That one I do kinda get. It doesn't really fit the vibe of the Lost and Damned. But my other favorite, my actual favorite, my number one favorite, Vladivostok FM, is technically still here, but all the songs are replaced with way worse songs. And I'm pretty sure they're all just American songs. Looking at the wiki here, all the songs in the base game were named like some Russian shit, but in the DLC, all the songs are named like super basic American song names like The Best Thing, Crazy World, Can't Get Enough, You Never Know, Lovin' You More, and The Weekend. These are songs that people nowadays would call AI generated because they're so generic, and it doesn't look like any of them are European, so what are you even doing on this station? Look how they massacred my Additionally, I was also extremely disappointed by the new Vice City FM. The original GTA Vice City is like the best soundtrack ever in gaming, but this station is just bad. The best thing about it was the return of the host, Fernando, which was a huge surprise and was very funny, and he's so funny, of course, and that made it worthwhile, but the songs were just really disappointing. But that really is the only disappointment here. Overall, The Lost and Damned is a super high quality experience that I wouldn't trade for all the clothing grade leather in Sicily. With plenty of side content and its own unique identity, the whole urban biker gang thing is such an interesting perspective to tackle. It's kind of surprising how few biker video games there actually are. Good ones, anyway. There's kind of nothing else like it, so I mean, if you haven't played it, you know, call up Terry and Clay and have them bring you a copy if you think you're tough enough. Great job, Rockstar. What will you think of next? The Ballad of Gay Tony was the second and final DLC released for this game, the final episode from Liberty City, as it were. Rather than the grit and grime and sadness of The Lost and Damned and the main story, Ballad of Gay Tony offers a completely different vibe, with its colorful, clean interface, chic, upscale loading screens with this low-key, high-end club music, its fun, energetic characters, and overall more vibrant look. In this story, you embody the very shoes of Luis Lopez, who we saw a handful of times in the main story and in The Lost and Damned. We catch up with him during the bank robbery from the main story with Nico and the McCrearys, where Luis is one of the hostages on the ground. One of his fellow hostages wants to be a hero. Luis tells him that's not a good idea, but he goes for it anyway. He shoots Michael, then he gets shot. We saw all this before, but now we're treated to the aftermath, where Luis doesn't tell the cops shit. Then he actually bumps into Nico and company on the street, not knowing at all that they were the robbery robbers just back then. Also, Johnny Klebitz drives by. Luis struts down the streets of Manhattan with a level of swagger matched only by Peter Parker. He strolls on down to the apartment of his boss, Anthony Prince, or as he's come to be known on the streets, Gay Tony. Tony is a club owner who came up in the 80s and has become one of the bigger names in the Liberty City nightlife industry, although he's starting to become a bit washed up. Luis is his business partner and very close friend, who arrives to Tony already rattling off a list of complaints about his personal and professional life.
In a city where the rich mindless crowd is suddenly poor and mindless, another club catering to the gay and decadent crowd, where the gay and decadent crowd suddenly think decadence means buying outrageous new throw cushions instead of getting loaded in a bar.
A couple of wise guys show up to collect, but Tony assures Luis that this is not a big deal, so the two of them head out to take care of some business around the clubs. After the business is taken care of, Luis runs into his childhood friends Armando and Henrique, who the bouncer won't let into the club. They're still pretty small time, whereas Luis is moving up fast, so he decides to drop them off at home before calling it an early night. The next morning, Luis goes to see Tony, who's stressed out because he has two different benefactors who are now both trying to claim majority control over Tony's businesses.
Man, we're fucked.
So I'll go tell them they gave you the money as a present. If they don't like it, I take them to the special VIP room at the bottom of the West River.
It's gonna be very crowded in the VIP room.
Luis thinks he can make them both see the light because he's the one who gets his hands dirty, while Tony mostly sticks to the idea side of things. Not that there's any resentment between the two of them. Luis very much understands that Tony is a highly experienced businessman who knows how to plan things, but would only be a liability out in the field. And Luis is basically Tony's protege, poised to take things over once Tony retires, so he's still more in the learning phase. They have an almost father-son-like relationship, where they say they're just business partners, but are clearly looking out for each other on a personal level. I love the little detail that Tony calls Luis Lou, but Luis never lets anyone else call him Lou.
Tony, what do you think?
Desi wouldn't let me get dressed like that, huh?
See what I mean?
Come to think of it, Lou, what the fuck are you wearing, huh?
What?
Hey, Lou!
It's Luis.
Yeah, whatever. Come here, give me some love right here.
The pair end up having to do some work for the people they owe money to, the Ancelotti family and Maury Kibitz, because that's just business. Maury Kibitz is the brother of Brucey Kibitz from the main story, and he basically acts exactly like Brucey, but when Brucey and Maury are together, Brucey acts all meek and quiet, which is crazy because he's so loud and aggressive in the main story. But apparently he's highly intimidated by his Napoleonic older brother Maury, who Luis is mainly dealing with. On top of all the business at the clubs with Tony that he wants to focus on, he's also dragged into a few conflicts from his old neighborhood. His mom's been borrowing money from a loan shark who is not messing around, and Luis does everything he can to pay off her debt, and even though she takes the money, she curses him for earning money through uncouth means. He also keeps getting roped into schemes with Armando and Henrique, mostly involving small-time deals, the kind of thing Luis is trying to move on from. He also gets into some big-time deals with this real estate developer Yusuf Amir, who's like an insane son of a trillionaire oil sheik or something, and Luis's work for him is mostly just stealing crazy stuff so Yusuf can keep it as a toy, but he pays well and he's a good guy to know. A lot of people seem to like this character. I was personally not charmed by him. Found him pretty annoying. That's just me. Also, why is he watching the GTA 4 credits on his TV? Luis squares things with Maury on the professional side, and on the personal side, he finally convinces Brucey to stand up to him, which is pretty satisfying. But he starts to get a little salty with Tony over his reckless business practices and his reckless drug use. Tony almost ODs in his apartment thanks to his dickhead boyfriend Evan, whom's nose Luis promptly breaks in response to this. Tony, still messed up on the pills, immediately tries to go do a very risky job all on his own, but Luis has none of this, and when Tony refuses to stand down, Luis also punches Tony in the face, knocking him out cold. They reconvene a couple days later, with Tony still a damn mess, but he's gotten word about some diamonds that he thinks would be a safe investment. They buy the diamonds, but they are immediately stolen by the Lost on behalf of Ray Buccino, but when Ray sends Nico and Johnny to go sell the diamonds, Luis is able to interrupt the sale and starts blasting. Everyone scatters and he's able to retrieve the diamonds. A victory for now. Luis has also been doing some work for Ray Bulgarin, who he soon finds out was the original owner of the diamonds, and he tries to have Luis killed over them, but Luis obviously knows how to handle himself and escapes just fine. On his way into the club that evening to meet up with Tony to discuss business, Luis also lets in Brucey and Roman, of course none of them aware that Luis almost shot Roman's cousin the other night. Luis informs Tony that Gracie Ancelotti has been kidnapped, and since they're still in debt to the Ancelotti family, they're going to have to give up the diamonds in exchange for getting Gracie back. The handoff is going just fine at first, but then it's ambushed by Ray Bulgarin and his goons. He wants his diamonds back and has beef with both sides of the handoff. The diamonds get lost in the shuffle, but Luis and Tony are able to make it out safely with Gracie. Later, Luis is confronted in a public restroom by the wise guys from the beginning who strongly encourage him to kill Tony in order to get back into Bulgarin's good graces. Luis briefly considers it, but he's not about all that betrayal. Him and gay Tony are ride or die, despite the recent hiccups in their relationship. So when the wise guys come to the club later, expecting Luis to take their deal, he says, "Psych, bitch," and then pops one of them and lets the other one go because the other one was a made guy. Tony is mad at Luis for considering killing him, but Luis is like, "Yeah, but I didn't kill you, and besides, your pill-popping, bad decision-making ways have been making things very difficult for both of us." Tony starts to realize that he's been a lousy friend and a lousy business partner, so the two of them decide not to skip town and instead go on the offensive against Bulgarin and try to take him out. It's agreed that Tony should lay low while Luis goes to do the deed, and with a little help from Yusuf and his toys, Luis chases Bulgarin to the airport. He gets on Bulgarin's plane at the last second, and after an onboard shootout, Bulgarin is like, "You know what, if you kill me, I drop this grenade and the plane explodes." But Luis is like, "I'll take my chances," and shoots Bulgarin. The plane sure enough does explode in midair, but Luis escapes thanks to his parachuting skills that I never told you about and heads straight to the park to meet Tony. At the park, he bumps into this random homeless guy, knocking him down into a pile of trash, then helping him up and walking away. But in the pile of trash, this guy notices something. He picks it up and finds the diamonds. The oblivious Luis keeps on walking and catches up with Tony. The two of them are back on good terms and now have enough money and security to keep running the clubs the way they actually want to and stay best friends in the process. Also, Yusuf is there. I love the chill vibe of this story. It's the perfect reprieve from the darkness of the other two. Exactly what was needed after two stories about dark, sad, angry, broken men. Like I said a bunch, I really enjoyed those stories, but for my money, this game kinda has the perfect tone for a GTA game. Don't get me wrong, I prefer a variety of tones. I like that some are more dark and some are more fun and light, but I think Ballad of Gay Tony strikes a perfect balance with its well-written characters that feel more like normal people, and the stakes still feeling important and serious without being about the saddest guy with the saddest life you've ever heard of, and giving us kind of a happy ending that has our characters prospering rather than suicidal. Also, I found Luis to be a much more relatable protagonist than we usually see. He's not the most hardened, brooding criminal in the world. He spends a lot more time interacting with normal people and living in the world of non-criminals. He's a well-adjusted, charming dude who you feel like you could know in real life. Also, this guy fucks. In one scene, Luis walks up to a random stranger in the club, introduces himself, and says, "You want to have sex?" And then they go do it right then and there. And that's just like a quick 20-minute tangent for Luis while he's out taking care of stuff. I found this to be highly relatable. This happens to me a lot too. Let's talk about LGBT representation. I remember one time as a kid playing Red Dead Redemption on my television, and my grandma was in town and she saw me playing and she was like, "Oh, what's this?" And I was like, "This is an awesome cowboy game." And she was like, "Oh, it's about killing Indians?" And I was like, "No." And she was like, "Oh, it's about killing escaped slaves?" And I was like, "No, it's about this guy who used to be an outlaw and the government took his family hostage, so now he has to round up his old gang." And then she became disinterested and walked away. See, in her mind, since video games are the most vile thing in the world, a video game about being a cowboy would be about the most vile things one could get up to in the Old West. And if you think video games are the most vile thing in the world, you know that Grand Theft Auto is the worst of them all. And you'd probably be pretty upset about a game called Grand Theft Auto: The Ballad of Gay Tony. Is it about murdering all the gays? But I was actually pleasantly surprised by the portrayal of Gay Tony. He's really not a gay stereotype. He's a fully well-rounded person, and being gay is a big part of who he is, but it's far from the only thing he is. Certainly not the lazy stereotype that many might assume Rockstar Games would present. And look at Bernie Crane, Florian from the main game. He may be slightly closer to an offensive stereotype, what with this gay-ass run and so forth, but he's not just an offensive stereotype. He grew up in some of the worst conditions imaginable and finally had enough of it, finds a way to make it to America and changes his whole identity and finally becomes the person he wants to be. Sure, he can really only accomplish this by burying his trauma as deep as possible and more or less trying to pretend it never happened, but at least he gets to enjoy life a little bit. I mean, I don't even know if therapy would work for someone so deeply traumatized. It's really hard for most of us to understand the horrors and depravity these people have been subjected to. And also he has sex with men, which is funny. I'm not saying this game provides the best portrayal of gay people I've ever seen of all time. That honor still, of course, rests with Dumbledore in the Lego Harry Potter games. But in terms of AAA gaming, it's pretty rare to see representation this solid, which is just a thing you might not expect from Rockstar, the makers of the hooker killing game.
Gentlemen, watch your language. We're in the great melting pot. We're not or or we're proud Americans.
The writing feels especially sharp here. A lot of these guys in this fancy club scene have had to rely on a bit of charm to have gotten where they are, and you can see how they deliberately make themselves as affable as possible when talking to business associates. You need this bit of humor and quick wit to schmooze with high-end clients in this line of work. You gotta be fun and tough at the same time. Just like the last DLC, the whole aesthetic is once again changed to reflect the story's tone. The menu is all colorful, and the song plays if you keep it paused long enough. They kinda don't have a visual filter over the game like the base game's greenish filter and desaturated look, or the Lost and Damned's super yellow and grainy film filter. This one looks a lot more neutral, and it really does change the vibe of the entire city. It feels like a much more calm and less mean place, which I think just goes to show you the level they went to make you feel each character's perspective. They also got rid of this depth of field effect that it had, which made the buildings in the distance look a little blurrier. It worked just fine stylistically in the main game, but was clearly done to work around the technical limitations, and getting rid of it does fit the aesthetic here, but it also makes the texture pop in on the buildings a lot more obvious. It's not too noticeable, and I do think it was the right move stylistically, so not a mistake, just something worth pointing out. Also, our boy Luis here has a real bold fashion sense. Rather than having to pick the perfect track jacket sweatpants combo like Nico did in the main game, or the no outfits of the Lost and Damned, you instead have a couple of 2008 hot stud outfits to pick out of Luis's closet. They're all a little bit out there, simple but detailed. The thing I didn't enjoy was the radio. I'm pretty sure this is the exact same radio as the Lost and Damned, but that makes it worse, because the Lost and Damned radio was already not as good as the base game's radio, but it was slightly excused for the music feeling a lot more appropriate for the biker video game, but not for the laid-back nightlife vibe of this. Why the hell didn't they bring back the jazz station? I forgave it for not being in the biker game because bikers aren't very jazzy, but these fellows are very jazzy, so where's the jazz? And generally it's just kind of lame that the Ballad of Gay Tony didn't receive its own unique soundtrack. But that's kind of the only complaint I have. Again, these episodes from Liberty City really fix a lot of the small issues I had with the main game, like the story feeling bloated and drawn out. Both of these are tight and compact with less filler and more quality. No checkpoints in the main game, these both have checkpoints. Have I mentioned that game too sad? Not this time. Lack of weapon variety? Well, Lost and Damned introduced a bunch of fun new weapons. This one doesn't include any of the ones added in that because those are biker only, I guess, but there are a whole bunch of new ones added here. The new pistol feels like a pistol, handles like a pistol, pretty effective, pretty classy. The P90 is just a monster SMG, super powerful, super accurate, stable with a huge magazine. The only disadvantage being that it takes your SMG slot but can't be fired while driving, meaning you're mostly going to be stuck using the pistol while in vehicles, but I think this is a fair trade-off. It's the type of interesting weapon balancing I love to see. Yusuf's Gold SMG, not too crazy from a gameplay perspective, but cool looking and you can use it while driving, so the auto shotgun's kinda neat with explosive rounds as an option, but I didn't think it was quite as neat as the super neat shotguns from the Lost and Damned, but that's okay. An even more extra good sniper rifle and an LMG, which is quite powerful and should have been in the base game. Also sticky bombs, which can be very useful. They throw in this SWAT tank, which is cooler than having no tank, but still not that fun. But what really butters my biscuit is the return of parachutes, which we only saw in San Andreas. This is really cool. They make parachuting kind of a thing in this game. They have you do it a lot, with multiple missions designed around it and the base jumping side activity. The sky's a lot more emphasized over here in general. In the other two, there was an altitude limit that was lower than the tallest building. I found this to be unacceptable. I mean, it was also the case with Vice City on the PS2, but that was Vice City on the PS2. By the time of San Andreas, you could fly up super high. Way too high sometimes. Kinda like, why are you making me fly an hour super high into the air just to have me get out and parachute down to the ground? I mean, flying was never going to be a huge part of this game because of the smaller map. Flying a fast plane wouldn't have worked at all, but upping the helicopter and skydiving and such in missions was not a bad call. And letting you fly way higher up is way more better because it was stupid before that you couldn't. And the missions in this, pound for pound, are the best in the whole package to me. Some say they're a bit over the top, which I can't necessarily disagree with, but I disagree with that's a problem. I love the epic, ridiculous scale of these missions. They really don't hold back this time. And the best part about them was the variety. Look at this one. You have to threaten a blogger by taking him up in a helicopter, then push him out of the helicopter, then jump out and catch him before he hits the ground. Then he's pretty darn ready to stop writing hurtful blog posts about Tony. That's fun gaming. The early mission on the driving range where you get this guy to talk by hitting him with golf balls and then do a golf cart chase. Insane top of train helicopter defense mission craziness. More interesting locations do a good job spicing things up. Shootouts in the club or in the amusement park are a lot more memorable than the 15th dilapidated building Nico has shot up that day. Another new thing in this DLC, which would become a Rockstar staple from this point onward, is the addition of optional side objectives and story missions, which is somewhat controversial. They're just little things like completing the mission within a certain time limit or getting a certain number of headshots, don't take any damage, small stuff like that. Then it gives you a little score at the end telling you how well you did. I get where people are coming from, saying this is kind of annoying, being told you did a bunch of stuff wrong that you didn't even know you were supposed to be doing. On one hand, I do kind of like having some side goals, especially with Rockstar's games getting increasingly easy. It's nice to be able to throw in a little extra challenge so your brain doesn't turn into glue. But on the other hand, it usually encourages you to play the missions in a way that seems counterproductive to the experience the game is trying to provide. Like, I feel like the whole point of Red Dead 2 is to take the game at its own pace and not try to rush things, breathing in as many details as possible, and letting yourself get lost in something like a philosophical conversation between two interesting characters. But then after the mission, the game is like, oof, bad job, buddy. You took way too long listening to Hosea yap and looking at the trees and wildlife. You were actually supposed to speed through that as quickly as possible. Yeah, poor show, my guy. But really, I think it's just kind of a nuisance at worst. It's a good idea in theory. I'm still not sure how I feel about it. Let me know in the comments how I feel about it. And just like Lost and Damned, we have our own set of side missions and activities. Drug deals where you pick up the boys and sell drugs or steal drugs or whatever, shoot people, escape, make money, not the most groundbreaking thing, but we also have the cage fighting, which is a super fun way to make a little extra cash, base jumping, which I mentioned, and the nightclubs with an actual fun dancing minigame, where you kinda use the thumbsticks to move your arms and your legs kinda, and you dance to the beat. Like, usually dancing in games is just a quick time event, but they actually made it into a fun mechanic here. It felt more like I was dancing and less like I was hitting a button prompt. Good job on that. And this probably goes without saying, but I love the way these three stories are intertwined. It's a fascinating showcase of the interconnectedness of the crime industry in Liberty City, and how if you're in a freelance industry like this, you're gonna run into the same people a lot, and everyone is gonna kinda know everyone else through everyone else. Probably like how I imagine a real crime industry operates in a city like New York. I wouldn't know, I've never been. The biggest through line, of course, being the Diamond Saga, which fully comes together and wraps up in this DLC. If I understand correctly, the way it went was that the diamonds originally belonged to Ray Bulgarin in Europe and were stolen, possibly the thing that was stolen under Nico's watch that time when he escaped and made Bulgarin mad at him, and then coincidentally smuggled into the US on the same boat Nico arrived in, and then they are sold to Tony and Luis, but quickly stolen by Johnny Klebitz for Ray Bacino, stashed in two different dumpsters, picked up by Nico and that guy Luca, then Luca attempts to steal them, but then Nico gets them back for Ray and then meets back up with Johnny to sell the diamonds, and then those two are ambushed by Luis, who manages to take the diamonds back before finding out that Ray Bulgarin was the original owner of them, but Ray Bacino, of course, also wants the diamonds back, which is why he sends Nico and the McCrearys to kidnap Gracie Ancelotti, and since Tony and Luis are in debt to the Ancelotti family, they're sent to retrieve her back and just hand over the diamonds to Nico and Packy, and then they get Gracie back, but then Bulgarin's guys show up and fight Nico and Packy for the diamonds, leading the last guy to throw them over the edge into a moving garbage truck, thus being lost to everyone who is looking for them forever, and somehow winding up in a trash can somewhere else in the city, and ultimately getting found by a random homeless guy. Do I have that right? Let me know in the comments what you would do with a bag of diamonds. Such a cool idea to have this one plotline be the connective tissue between these three stories, and laying it out the way they did was a great execution of that cool idea. Also, I gotta say, The Lost and Damned and The Ballad of Gay Tony, fucking sick names to name something. Y'all really cooked with those titles. I mean, these are both fantastic and offer such varied experiences that I couldn't even tell you which one I liked more. All I know is that this complete edition is an incredible package, the likes of which we really don't see anymore. So if you're someone like me who thought GTA 4 was really cool but didn't think the DLC seemed worth it, well then get your head out of your face and pay the dollars to experience this. Unless you only have PlayStation. And you guys think we've reached the video's end. I talked about the whole game, I talked about the DLC, I talked about homosexuality in gaming. What could be left? Well, you're forgetting the part of these videos where I talk about the remastered version of the game and how it sucks. So let's talk about that now. Yeah, this game really doesn't have a remastered version. This is the only one of the 5 main GTA games that hasn't had any kind of remaster, and the only one that doesn't have a version available on PS5. People have done some pretty impressive things with mods in terms of a fan remaster or the like, but those require a good PC and modding skill. And I hear the PC version kinda sucks. And the other way to access this game on modern hardware would be with an Xbox, as the 360 version is still available on the Xbox store via backwards compatibility, and there are actually a handful of significant changes in this version. For this experiment, I borrowed my dad's Xbox Series X to give the game a try. He's literally the only person I know who owns an Xbox Series X. Backwards compatible games on Xbox are always downloaded from the store, even if you have the physical disc like I do. It just allows you to download it and play it for free when you have the disc. So it's only going to be able to install the latest version, and in this case that of course means the version with a bunch of songs missing. And I mean a bunch of songs. Now, if you know me, you know a major part of the reason I bought a PS2 to play the original games was to get the unaltered soundtracks. And while that was the right move, and while it did really suck having a sizable number of great songs removed in the definitive editions, those soundtracks were still good and still mostly what you remember, just slightly lacking. Not saying I excuse or forgive this practice whatsoever, especially in a version of the game billed as definitive, but I'm saying this because it's nothing compared to how the GTA 4 soundtrack was cut down. The other two soundtracks were truncated, but this one was just eviscerated. Those two got a decent kicking, but this was straight up first-degree murder. Those two were shot in the kneecaps by John Wick. This one was disemboweled by Leatherface. Music rights in games tend to lapse far more often than they do in movies and TV shows. I guess a big reason for this is that game companies often only buy a temporary license for the song that runs out after a certain amount of time, probably because it's way cheaper to do it that way, and because it's not going to affect anyone's opinion of the game at launch, which feels kinda sneaky to me. So now we have a bunch of songs getting removed, and the only way to get the full soundtrack is to mod them back in, which is probably illegal, or buy an old disc and play it on an old console, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was also illegal. So let's go over my favorite radio stations in the game. JNR, the Jazz Station, thankfully remains untouched. I'm sure those were some pretty cheap licenses. Liberty Rock, though, they got it pretty rough over there. There's still some good songs here, but a lot of the true bangers are gone, and I didn't find myself tuning into this station nearly as much as I did on the 360, but that's not even close to the worst of it. They completely nuked my favorite station, Vladivostok FM. Of the 13 songs originally on that station, 12 of them were removed. I'm no mathematician, but I'm pretty sure that doesn't leave too many. Okay, but they did add a bunch of music to this station, and yeah, it's okay, I guess. Like, it's a little better than the version of the station presented in the DLC, but it's still a travesty of the highest order. I feel like this station in particular is a big part of this game's identity, and it's pretty much gone for all intents and purposes. Totally weak sauce that they didn't care enough to keep it intact. Look how pretty much all the stations took a decent hit. I was pretty surprised to hear most of the high-profile songs from the DLC remained, but there were still plenty of cuts made there too, and as a whole, this is messed up, dude. It sucks how this is just not one of the games Rockstar cares to maintain, because it's one of their best. But there are some positives to this version. Loading times are basically instantaneous, but also that's kind of a bad thing because the loading screens and the loading music are really cool and you don't really get to see them at all. Load longer, please. But an even better thing is that the frame rate on Series X is buttery smooth. This game was obviously pushing the 360 even at the best of times, so things could definitely get choppy when driving too fast or running over too many people, but look how smoothly I glide through these pedestrians on the Series X. It might be kinda hard to tell just from watching this video, but it makes a big difference moment to moment. However, even though I said the super high frame rate was a big positive, it's also kind of a negative sometimes too. There's this infamous issue that's been known for quite a while, where in the final mission you have to mash a button to climb onto a helicopter, but the higher frame rate makes it almost impossible to do using conventional means. There is an alternative way to do it that did work for me, but it just sucks that this has been a known issue for so long and they haven't done anything about it. I guess it's still not as bad as the definitive editions of the other games, just a subpar but convenient way to play this game. I've said all I can say on this matter. But that doesn't mean I'm done quite yet. So why don't you just stop, go over there, plug in the Xbox 360 wireless adapter, and fork over 15 bucks, because it's time for you and me to go online. Nowadays, GTA Online has come to be known as the worst thing to happen in gaming since the Sonic the Hedgehog balloon disaster. But before all the flying cars and hover cars and the Batmobile, we had the much simpler online mode of GTA 4. Accessed through your handy-dandy cell phone, you have the option of joining free roam or one of the different competitive game modes. So I went online, created an amazing character, and popped into a free roam sesh. I couldn't get into any of the competitive modes because they were all empty, but the open world was fun. It's basically just simple sandbox GTA insanity, but made even crazier because there's a bunch of other people there. You can pick up weapons, they're lying around, I drove some cars, I shot some people, I got shot, I teamed up with people. One time there was this guy who was invincible, probably from hacking, and the whole thing was just everyone in the lobby going after him, but none of us could do anything about it, which was pretty funny. You can still enter most of the buildings you can enter in story mode. It's all pretty bare bones, but pretty fun. Oh, and also if you access it within the Lost and Damned or the Ballad of Gay Tony, then you're in a session with those games' aesthetics and weapon sets. All very neat. This would be a very fun way to play GTA with friends. But otherwise, there isn't a whole lot here that you can't do in story mode. There isn't really a whole lot to do in general. So it's more just a bit of fun. We're all having a little bit of fun here. It's Xbox 360. And so it was, and continues to be. and we finally gaze upon the beginning of the end of our Grand Theft Auto 4 discussion. Now this is, of course, along with all the others, one of the best games I've ever played, and it does what it does better than any other. However, at this point, having played all of these now, I'd say my favorite has to be San Andreas. But they offer completely different experiences. They kind of occupy opposite ends of the spectrum of GTA, and you also shouldn't care what I think because in my San Andreas video I said that I liked Vice City more, so nothing matters at all. And I think this game's prestigious position of the highest rated GTA game on Metacritic is well earned. I know a certain percentage of this game's fan base is not going to be okay with me saying anything negative about the game, but it's going to be okay. This is yet another masterpiece from the GTA series that nothing has been able to live up to. The legend of Niko Bellic and Johnny Cage is one for the ages, and I would love to see some of these characters brought back in GTA 6. Maybe Johnny, no spoilers. But I'd like to think Niko and Roman are out there somewhere right now. Perhaps Roman has moved up from his luxury SUV driver service and now owns a limo company and finally got his mansion in Vice City. And Niko stopped killing and moved into the pool house, and Roman and his family live in the mansion, and Niko just chills in the pool all day, and everyone has a good time. I can see why this is one of the more divisive entries in the series. At first when you start, you're blown away by the next-gen graphics, the amazing physics, the tight gunplay, the incredible map, but when you dig a little deeper, you find that the map is only one city, it's not that huge, the driving is really hard, you find the missions are repetitive, the weapons are repetitive, the open world lacks variety, and it made you sad. But then you dig even deeper than that, you realize, well, it made you sad, it also made you think, and it made you feel. The driving is hard at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's more immersive than ever. The missions might be repetitive, but the gameplay is so good that they're fun no matter what. And while the map is small, it's the most dense they've ever made. It's packed with cool and unique details around every corner. And it all comes together to make a Grand Theft Auto like none other, that excels at things most of the other games don't even attempt. And you see just how special it is. I really wish Rockstar were still making DLC or smaller spin-off games. I know the online stuff has taken its place because that's where the money's at, but it would be nice if Rockstar would let some smaller teams work on some smaller games like before so we could get more like this. But sadly, I don't think there will be anything like this again. But maybe that's not sad. Maybe this game is special, and that being special is what's special. And this game deserves a remaster. Come on. I mean, nothing crazy, just do what they did with GTA 5. Keep everything intact, just a few minor technical and visual improvements, that's all we need. And they'd probably release it for $50 and not even restore all the music, but whatever, it's not gonna happen anyway, so just dust off your Xbox 360 like I did and have yourself a 2008 evening. Wow, I hope you liked that stupidly long video. I'm sure glad it's over. For now, I only have one GTA game left to play, GTA 5, which I know is not as much fun to talk about since it's been so milked to death as a topic, but just like with this one, I'll be playing the original Xbox 360 version, and that's cool for you. I might try to make some shorter videos that I can put out a little more frequently. I don't know. Give me a like if you like me, give me a like if you hate me, and happy 2008.